My fellow Americans, let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis 2. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing.
Roger, roll pitch. The integrity, AMT high.
Due to that suit being pressurized and expanded, as well as the umbilicals being connected.
We are now falling to the moon rather than rising away from Earth. It is an amazing milestone.
We are standing by for the integrity crew aboard Orion to surpass the Apollo 13 record.
Integrity, we're now resuming operational audio comm.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, very good morning, my friends. Just gone 6 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. What is it? Wednesday, the 29th of April, as the sun rises across London town. Hope wherever you are, Alarm Clock Britain, it's nice with you today. Tell us where you are. Tell us what you're doing, what you're up to. I'm going to try, I promise, to do a show that doesn't involve Keir Starmer. If you want to be part of that, don't laugh at me, Charlie. Charlie Road is here. Morning, Charlie.
Good morning.
It's almost like we're living together at the moment, isn't it?
Well, you sound rather unhappy about that.
Oh, God. I've had it this morning. That doesn't sound right. 0344 499 1000 if you'd like to be on the show this morning. 0344 499 1000. Who will get that first voice note in or call? Loads to talk about. Text to 87222. I was in a really good mood when I walked in this morning, but the team, there seemed to be problems emanating from the breakfast show team. Christian, who is 40 what? How old? 44, comes in and goes, oh, I feel really old. What? 44, 60, just got out of bed at 2 a.m, right? Yesterday I had stomach spasms, so I went to the doctor and I've got a hurting ankle. And I'm going, God, if you feel old, what is that? And then Charlotte, brilliantly, who works on the show, I said, you've got the same shirt on as me. And she delivered the killer line, Alarm Clock British. She went, yeah, I nicked it from my dad's wardrobe. Spot the oldest one. Christian says, how do you know when you get old? Because everything hurts. Everything. Front, back, side and beyond. How old are you, Charlie, really?
I'm 36.
Really? You look older than that. I'm joking. He surprised me. I'm not saying anything about Mark.
Start the car.
How old are you, Mark? 62. 52. There you go. Right. Still not the oldest by, and Nahar just is in fantastic form and doesn't do anything, so that's very lovely. So listen, team, we're up and at it for today, and I'm sorry, I was joking. How can any show, I mean, it's all, from beginning to end, it is all about Keir Starmer and King Charles. Starmer, rocked by a major Labour rebellion last night, of course, the vote that he basically said to Labour MPs, I'm going to whip you, which I know people will laugh, but you see, I don't mean like that, but we are going to make sure that you vote for me. People are accusing him of a cover-up over Mandelson. There was a plea by the Tories for him to be and appear in front of the Privileges Committee. 15 Labour MPs rebelled, whilst 50 others did not take part in the vote. I thought Kemi Badenoch was fantastic at points yesterday. She basically was saying, if there's no cover-up, why wouldn't you refer yourself to the Privileges Committee, Charlie, and have that conversation? He spent the entire day, as did his lackeys, saying that this was a political stunt ahead of the local elections. Earlier, and we played in the show yesterday, Foreign Office Chief Philip Barton said that Starmer knew of the Mandelson risks and was uninterested in vetting. I'll give you this for nothing. Prime Minister's Question Time will be incredibly interesting today from midday with Julia. Also, Morgan McSweeney, we'll talk about him. He took the bullet, it seemed. He wasn't everything I thought he was going to be. Sort of small, Irish, ginger little man with a squeaky voice. I don't know. There we go. Also, this morning, it's come out, apparently Starmer, to head off the rebellion, has offered Arrange a return to the Cabinet. This is the same Angela Rayner that admitted underpaying £40,000 in stamp duty, the same Angela Rayner that said that Boris Johnson should resign to uphold ministerial standards. What next? Oh, I know. What they'll do next is, you remember Tulip Siddiq, the anti-corruption minister that got fired because she was found guilty of corruption in Bangladesh? We're going to bring her back. She could be the Attorney General. What a joke. And, of course, stateside, the King, I'm going to keep saying this today, the man's 77... The man has cancer. What an extraordinary example of the best form of soft diplomacy. Whatever we think about Trump, some good, some bad, I'm telling you this, Charles had him eating out of his hand last night. And if that is not a lesson to everybody, he talked in great detail, and it was all going very well until the new ambassador, I don't know if you've heard this story, my friend, the new ambassador to the United States, the one that replaced Mandelson, Christian Turner. We've got it? We've got leaked audio where he said, frankly, Starmer's toast. This is the new US ambassador. Everything was going really well until this was leaked. Have a listen.
For me, that the furore, the scandal over Epstein, convicted sex offender, has gone right to the top of the British system, brought down senior member of the royal family, British ambassador to Washington, potentially the Prime Minister, and yet here in the US, it really hasn't touched anybody. And I think that is an interesting question you should ask American lawmakers you meet about the different levels of accountability in our system. There's currently a move on the Hill to bring to account some of those senior figures, including Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has been now called in to come and testify before Congress, and he's announced before Congress. The first question I ask is, how many Americans are being called to testify before Congress when the Epstein files show a lot of very, very senior people, politicians, business folks, Bill Gates, all having a close association with it.
Didn't really understand the last 10 seconds, but understood the first bit. He was basically saying that the scandal that brought down Mandelson, Epstein, was likely to bring down the Prime Minister. I think almost every single person in the United Kingdom agrees with that. 0344 499 1000. So Starmer, the Royals. Can I just play you a clip, though, from Trump, Charlie? Because have we got the bit about my mother had a crush? That's my favourite line. It's coming. Did you see him? Because he love him or loathe him. I mean, he managed to turn round and say, just watch this. In everything that's going on, everything's really serious. This is what the Donald says to King Charles. Brilliant.
She really did love the family, but I also remember her saying very clearly, Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute. It's my mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it? Amazing how... I wonder what she's thinking right now.
Well, obviously nothing, because like my mother, she's dead. But 6:10 in the morning, 0344 499 1000. Charlie Reddy, good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Where should we start? Should we start yesterday on the show? Of course, you were with us as we watched Sir Philip Barton. I thought subtly stick the knife in, and then we saw Morgan McSweeney, and then that vote last night. What's your view?
Well, another dramatic day, another day of headlines for the Prime Minister, another headache and a half, I should imagine, waking up to more front pages. Still, this scandal rumbles on. Last night, as you say, there was a vote to refer the Prime Minister to a Privileges Committee. That's a committee made up of a small group of MPs, the majority of which are Labour MPs.
So why wouldn't he, if there was nothing to hide, two questions, why wouldn't he just put himself in front of them to prove his innocence, and why would he insist that Labour MPs voted in a certain way? Because that smacks of guilt, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and he should have done. Look, this is the guy that, whatever you think about the appointment of Peter Mandelson, and to an extent, Morgan McSweeney explained that yesterday, wrongly. He said the appointment should never have been made, but look, he was clearly, and the government's aim was clearly to get someone in that could form a trade deal with the US, and Peter Mandelson had trade credentials as the former EU commissioner.
I'm not trying to again be unfair. I just don't buy that.
Yeah.
I don't. When I saw Barton saying it had to be rushed through, we'll talk about McSweeney in a minute. You are telling me that a person that had to resign from public life twice, who was close friends with the worst paedophile in the history of the world, with all the dodgy shenanigans with Russia and China, that nobody in government thought, well, he might be good with a trade deal, but the rest of it is irrelevant. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, and people might well disagree. I can't imagine how much stuff he's got on so many of them, having been around so long. I know he was called the Prince of Darkness. It doesn't make sense to me. It's like a ticking time bomb. What, are they stupid or what?
Well, I think it's, to coin the phrase, desperate times calls for desperate measures, and how desperate the Labour Party are. And when you think, look, Peter Mandelson, he's obviously someone that's been able to, come back 2 or 3 times. He's obviously been able to charm someone somewhere along the line.
Unless he's got dirt.
But I think when you really are in the slumps of the polls that the Labour Party have been in, when you are Keir Starmer, when you've had multiple resets of your government and you're still not firing on any kind of cylinder, I think the idea, if somebody comes into your office and says, well, hold on, I was the architect of New Labour, I was with Tony Blair that, constructed 3 successive general elections for the Labour Party. Prime Minister, I can really help you. Put me in the US.
I'm sorry, I don't buy it. But I'd love to know, and I'm not being cynical, I'd love to know what you think, Pete. Charlie or me, 0344 499 1000. The truth of the matter is, and I was wondering if it was a revolt. I'll ask you that in a minute. Front of the Mail, Labour revolt over Starmer's sleaze cover-up. Most people have made their minds up. Here's a good question. From Gary, morning, Jez and Charlie. Why didn't they make a blind vote so that everyone can vote with their heart rather than how they're told?
Yeah, well, it should have been a free vote. Yeah, absolutely. Because you had good Labour MPs yesterday actually popping up to say, look, they were obviously against the vote, the appointment in the first place of Peter Mandelson. These are Labour MPs.
Did you see? Was it Emma Lavelle?
Yes, Lovell or whatever it is.
I thought it was an astonishing speech. She got quite emotional. She said, I spent my career working with victims of domestic abuse. I follow my Prime Minister, but being told how I have to vote is an outrage. Why doesn't he put himself in front? So only small, 15, but 50 abstained. Is that a chink in the armour? Does that get noted, do you think, by Starmer and his acolytes in number 10?
I think it will do. But, you've now got to ask the question, what power does he have to do anything about it? Because, he has to be wooing his backbenchers if he wants to stay in post after the local elections on the 7th of May. But it seems to me that he's creating a narrative for himself where he's blaming other people. So it was whipping the backbenchers last night. They have to keep him in post. He couldn't refer himself to the committee. I don't know why. He should have done. He should.
If you've nothing to hide,
if you've nothing to hide.
Absolutely, that's just rocket science, isn't it?
And this has gone beyond now just the appointment of Peter Mandelson. We're way beyond that now. This is about a guy that stood on the steps of Downing Street that said, I'm going to be whiter than white. I'm going to get rid of the Tories, get rid of the sleaze and scandal of the past. Who's now embroiled in an issue.
Far more.
He should just be able to say, no, I'm going to do it myself. I will refer myself.
But Dan Hodges, as you know, in the Mail, and he'll be here from 9 o'clock, forensically cutting this down, has been following this story. He said on this show on Monday he has lied to the House on these 7 occasions. Front of the Times, Labour MPs whipped to clear Starmer feel complicit. MPs whipped to clear Starmer feel complicit in the cover-up. That's what Badenoch spent yesterday. He said to all of you lot over there who are blindly following your leader, who, by the way, is leading you, it seems, if you listen to all the polls, to electoral disaster, you will be blamed by the British people as well because you are following what we all know to be untruth. There's 2 of them in the first voice note. Are these the singers? Charlie and George, morning.
Morning, Jezza. Morning, Charlie. It's Charlie and George again on our way to work to pay that £40 billion tax bill. Keir Starmer, where do we start? I mean, he's been lying since the day he got in office. He stood on the steps of Downing Street and he told us all, country first, party second. I mean, that was the first lie he told, wasn't it? I genuinely wanted Labour to do well for everybody, and we all knew what was coming. Try and have a good day. Over and out.
Brilliant. Nice and happy. 6:15. The truth is, you've just said it's beyond Mandelson now. This is entirely on a man who most people believe has covered this up, has forced whoever, Chris Wormold, Sir Philip Barton, Sir Ollie Robbins, Morgan McSweeney out to cover his back. And then, in the end, it's all on him. Absolutely. It's not going away. The man's got nowhere to turn and he's still squirming on the end of a hook.
Exactly. And look, this is someone, again, it's about the character of the individual, because if you are, for example, Boris Johnson, we all knew that he was a bit frivolous with language at times. He might not have been across the detail. We knew that about that man. But this is someone that's presented himself as the former director of public prosecutions. Someone that says, I would never lie. I would go to the ends of the earth to try and,
He lied to farmers. He lied to farmers in their faces. He lied to waspy women. He lied to pensioners. He's lied to everybody. It's not... Some people say, oh, you're really unfair. I've got that clip. This is Emma Lewell MP, a loyal Labour MP, talking from the heart. Watch this.
I feel the way that today's vote has been handled by the government smacks once again of being out of touch and disconnected from the public mood. The fact that MPs like me are being whipped into voting against this motion is, in my view, wrong, Mr. Speaker.
And there were many that felt like that. Can we talk about Morgan McSweeney? And I know I wasn't being disrespectful, but I always imagined somebody. I mean, at least when Mandelson was at the top of his game, we didn't know what he was like. There was a sort of presence. McSweeney sat there in his cheap suit. He looked very nervous as well. And one wonders what he was promised to take the bullet. Is he being offered an ambassadorial role or a knighthood or something? Of course, is his wife an MP?
She is. She's a whip as well. She's a Labour whip. She's in the whips office of the Labour Party.
There you go. Interesting. So what did you make of his testimony? We saw Philip Barton quite forensically doing what all civil servants do, which is he was really not taking any responsibility. But actually, there were a couple of things that he said that sort of struck. He said the Prime Minister accepted the risks, and the word I'd say about betting is uninterested, which isn't a word. It should be disinterested. But what did you make of Morgan McSweeney?
Well, I thought he cut himself as a... you're right, as someone that didn't give off the aura of someone that was all in charge of Number 10 as the Chief of Staff. He didn't appear to be someone that had the ability to be the enforcer for Number 10 and for the Prime Minister. But I think you're right. I think he was probably quite nervous. I think he'd been in the spotlight. Obviously, he has been for a long time. I mean, he's a victim of phone crime as well, don't forget.
Yes, it's impacted on his life, because he was walking down the road with two phones and one was taken, which happened to be the government one, and that didn't have the I can find the messages, and then he phoned the police, but he got straight through, which is quite interesting. But he didn't say I'm Morgan McSweeney and I've lost a vital piece of information about national security. He didn't mention his name or the phone or where he was. No, I mean, we have to have a degree. Quentin Letts, who I used to speak to loads. I can't afford him anymore. He's just a legendary. Have you read his column? He said, Labour's chief poisoner proved an underwhelming tiddler. A shaking bag of nerves in a suit, surely, from M&S schoolwear. That is absolutely brilliant by Quentin Letts. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. What do you make of Starmer? What do you make of the whole cover-up? We're here today. I mean, Prime Minister's question time will be spicy. Julia will be on that. He's privately offered Angela Rayner why did I do that? A return to Cabinet, an apparent attempt to head off a leadership battle. Yes, the same woman who hasn't paid her tax. And yes, all sorts of people have questions. But what is next? As I said, we're going to bring back the anti-corruption minister who's been charged with corruption. We'll bring Louise Hay back, the Transport Secretary. Oh, I nicked her phone. No, it wasn't nicked. Oh, I'm not sure. I can't remember. I mean, honest to God, what are they like?
And anything's possible, because we're reading stories about Rachel Reeves might be, moved on somewhere because, she's taking the fault now, all the blame for all the government's woes.
Well, I mean, she's toast. She knows that she's inextricably linked to Starmer.
Exactly. But, the idea that you can, we'll get rid of David Lammy, no bad thing, but, to bring back Angela Rayner, who's still got this tax affair issue hanging over her head, we'll get rid of Rachel Reeves and we might make Ed Miliband Chancellor just to sort of shore up the left. But why... that is blaming other people for the mistakes that are being made at the very heart of number 10.
Do you know what I find most frightening is the people that say, I mean, and I get it, but some people say, you know, it's really not right. You know, he's useless and whatever, but the opportunity to bring, I mean, anybody else would be worse. So we'll stick. I can't stick with this man for 3 years. If you stand by what you said about Johnson, which turned out to be correct, there you are, correct. And I was a massive Berger fan. He was right. You have to live or die by what you say, don't you?
Well, and the one person that we don't talk about very often is Ed Davey. And
who?
Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, who...
was he dressed up as John Travolta again? Because he did during the... Do you remember that? Left his last rally after the last election just as John Travolta with somebody next to him as... what was she called, the other part of the thing? Olivia Newton-John.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, do you not remember that?
Well, I know he said in comments yesterday, he said, I don't, you know me, I don't like stunts. And everybody sort of roared with laughter thinking...
Sorry? You are the man that does stunts the whole time.
Exactly. But to be fair to him, he said, go back to this time a couple of years ago, when we were having this debate about Boris Johnson, he looked back at his old speech and he looked at the speeches of Keir Starmer, and they were identical almost.
Have we got that clip from yesterday, that amazing clip that showed what the Tories put out about the liar thing? We'll get this, because... this is absolutely brilliant. But while we look for this, I just want to read, because I don't quite know how to respond to the third. I'll read you two normal texts, and the third one, I don't know what to say. Damon in Wigan, good morning. Fabulous Charlie. So spineless and gutless, Keir Starmer has been running around whipping his own MPs, doing all he can do to save his own skin. Morning to Mick says the most entertaining part of the King's visit to US is watching Yvette Cooper trying to look important with her exaggerated insincere smiles and inability to shake somebody's hand. I'd like you, Charlie Rowley, to respond to this from Emma Andrews. Morning, Jez. You asked what we're up to. I'm on my way to pick up a flask of frozen horse sperm for our precious mare, and I'm travelling from York to Whitchurch since 5 a.m, listening to you always. A frozen flask of horse semen.
Well, yes. Is it a long journey from York to Whitchurch?
I've got no idea. Why is it frozen? Will it defrost in the time? I mean, we could have... if you tuned in right now to hear defrosted horse semen, what would you be thinking? Let's get back. Let's get back to the similarities that he now faces. And Ed Davey, to be fair, from the Liberal Democrats, made this point. This was put out by the Tories yesterday. I don't know if you've seen. This is brilliant. Have a listen, my friends.
Prime Minister resorting to lies.
The Prime Minister lied. He lied to this country.
If he misled Parliament, he must resign.
It's no good, him trying to blame politicians in general. There's one person at the centre of this.
Look, there are only two possible explanations. Either he's trashing the Ministerial Code, or he's claiming he was repeatedly lied to by his own advisers. Come off it.
The public have made up their mind. I think the facts speak for themselves. He then lied about what had happened. The Prime Minister lied. I genuinely think now that it's in the national interest that he goes.
The Ministerial Code says that ministers who knowingly mislead the House should resign. Why is he still here?
I mean, you could literally put Kemi Badenoch saying that, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And that is everything that he said. The Prime Minister was saying about Boris Johnson all those years ago when he was leader of the opposition. Keir Starmer was leader of the opposition. Now, the Prime Minister, in my view, has misled the House, because he came to the House of Commons and said that there was no pressure applied on this Peter Mandelson appointment whatsoever. Now, he backtracked a couple of days later by saying, well, there's different kinds of pressure. But on the record, at the dispatch box, in the Commons, he has said no pressure was applied whatsoever. Well, two very, very senior civil servants, Sir Philip Barton and Sir Ollie Robbins, countered that. They said, no, there was pressure. Daily phone calls from the private office in number 10 to the Foreign Office. Sir Ollie Robbins lost his job over it, which now seems to be like, you know, the taxpayer will be forking out an employment tribunal claim there. And the Prime Minister must come back and correct the record. Otherwise, he's doing his own reputation down as someone, as I say, that was the former Director of Public Prosecutions, someone that's presented himself as someone that's going to be whiter than white, get rid of the sleaze and scandal of the past. And he's now in a situation where he's dragging his own party down, dragging his own government down, now going for the levers of bringing people that he sacked previously as his cabinet, as if they're going to come riding.
It is one hell of a mess. What do you make of it, Britain? 0344 499 1000. Morning, Charlie and Jeremy. Not only should it have been a free vote, but for Starmer to initiate the three-line whip when it concerns himself is surely a conflict of interest. That in itself should be brought before the Standards Committee. Keith in the Philippines. Goodness me, a large reach today. Uninterested, Kyle, means not interested. I thought the word was disinterested. I didn't know there was an uninterested. I'll take that. Pete's not happy with me. He says, like you, me old mum is dead, but I'd like to think she's looking down on me from somewhere. Have a bit of faith. Yeah. Morning, Andy.
Morning, Jeremy. It's Andy from Hull. So Keir Starmer's excuse for not wanting this vote is because there's far more important things to be getting on with. So, OK, then we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Why should we? But we expect in the next few weeks there to be lots and lots of things achieved by Downing Street, which he hasn't done so far, and to become really popular and save the day for Labour. Is that what he's going to do? Is it? All right, yeah, believe that when I see it. He must think we're stupid. The guy is a weapons-grade turbot, nothing more. Off he pops, he needs to go.
when I was growing up, a profound love of the British Empire, actually, and the good that Britain did for the world. And yet, to have that view today seems more of an exception than the norm.
Over the past week, I have been living on the coast of Belgium. Small boats leaving the Flemish coast to go to England. So far, 20 small boats that have left the Belgian coast to come to England.
When they saw that drunk woman at 5:45 a.m. in the morning, they just felt...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're live across the UK. It is, of course, Talk Breakfast, the home of common sense and the home of the alarm clock. Brett, what are you up to this morning? We've got an update on the horse sperm story. Sorry, I know this is weird. Emma Andrews, big fan of the show, is travelling, I can't remember where, anyway, somewhere to Whitchurch, and she's got some frozen horse sperm for her mare. She's been on the road since far. She said, "You two are so funny. It's 140 miles, but the sperm is in liquid nitrogen."
Well, now we know.
Who knew? 0344 499 1000. Stephen Peel, I'm getting a right old pasting this morning. You're a complete idiot, Kyle. Of course, uninterested is a word. For goodness sake, you're supposed to be a bloody journalist. Disinterested most often means not biased, whereas uninterested simply means not interested. It's not difficult, you total... not a particularly nice message, but I can handle that. I've had worse.
Well, there we go.
Did you know there was a word uninterested?
I thought that there might have been. But
you are such offensive. You must have. What are they? What do you get? Wooden bits in you? What's that?
Splinters.
You must have splinters in your body. Morning, Maggie. She says, "JK and the gorgeous Charlie. I've noticed McSweeney used the 'I don't remember, don't recall' card. It's funny how amnesia steps in when being questioned. He thinks we are buying his response. We're not. We see you, McSweeney. We see you."
Yeah, and
it's interesting.
He tried also to sort of say, look, during a reshuffle that was taking place, Peter Mandelson might have been in the building. He was in the Cabinet Office to begin with. He came through the link door. There's a connecting door between the Cabinet Office and
he was photographed the day of the shuffle.
He was in there, but, I didn't see him. He might have messaged. Everybody messages me. I get lots of advice all the time for lots of different people.
Sorry, can we just rewind? Did anybody jump in at that point and say, did those people message the phone that you managed to lose, or was your personal personal phone?
I don't think it was picked up on until a bit later on, but
Thornbury's having a moment, isn't she? Dame Emily Thornbury. Let's not forget something. I read this last night. Love her or loathe her. She was one of Starmer's henchmen all the way through and then was ditched for Lord Hermer. Everybody got the job they were supposed to get. She wasn't. She was given this plum role as sort of lead chairperson of this Foreign Affairs Select Committee. I get the distinct impression she's enjoying herself.
You get that impression, yes. She's, I think, enjoying the attention, but also the occasion of holding this government to account, where she might have, as you say, once been a part. But you're right, every other cabinet minister that was in a shadow position before the election got the job. Except for her. She made one mistake, I think, during the election campaign by being, quite frankly, honest with the British public. You know, heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid!
You know, an MP actually says, look, if we do introduce a 20% cut in VAT on private schools, then there will be an increase in the number of people in state schools, and therefore school classes in some schools might go up. Well, that was, you know, she was never seen again after that. But the reality is very much what she said.
Pete, good morning.
Good morning, Jezza. Starmer to even consider putting Mandelson into that job was dodgy. I mean, you know, when you think about it, the man has a past going back over decades. He shouldn't have even been offered the job as a toilet cleaner. Surely Starmer must have known that at some point this is going to come back and bite him in the backside. Have a nice day.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit here and do another 2 weeks of shows and say what's going on. Either, right, he's that unswitched on, doesn't care about the public, or either doesn't get it, or there's got to be. It's too stupid. It's like saying if you walk into that room, it's on fire. If you drive in that car, the brakes aren't working. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Keith in Nottingham says, morning, Jez. In another life, you could have had Starmer in front of a studio audience and read out the results of a lie detector. However, in this case, we all know the answers before you open the envelope. Maybe Starmer should have some backstage time with Graham. Wow. Let's get Graham on the show. Oh, dear God. Morning, Jeremy. Last night on Peter's show, what show's that? Oh, Peter Carpenter, sorry, yes. A caller brought up a really interesting point. That is, if Starmer insists that all procedures were followed, then why at least did 3 people have to lose their jobs? That's a really interesting point.
Exactly. And we're now at the stage where the sacking of Sir Ollie Robbins, because the Prime Minister says, well, I wasn't told, that the advice that was given to Sir Ollie Robbins was that that Peter Mandelson had not been recommended for passing.
Spit it out, Roly, spit it out.
Well, but this is the thing, because it's a recommendation by the UKSV. It's the Foreign Office that make the decisions if they can bring in mitigations. Now, Sir Ollie Robbins felt that had happened, and therefore he recommended the Prime Minister appoints Peter Mandelson. But that is the point. When we're getting in the weeds of, the appointment was made on the basis of the FCDO's decision, that where the Prime Minister wasn't fully abreast of the facts.
What is he abreast of? Seriously.
But that's beyond the point. You know, the Foreign Office did their job because all due process was followed in the way in which things work. That's how it works. If you're not happy with the process, Prime Minister, then OK, I would have quite liked to have known that actually the recommendation to the Foreign Office about Peter Mandelson vetting wasn't to go through with it. But if you don't know that, you don't know that.
But you would. What I'm trying to say is, if you had antennae, and I've said this since I started this, if you had any joke about the old show, if in your DNA you had the ability, the political nous, to smell out trouble and not actually walk towards it every day, something in your head would have gone, I've fought all my life to get to this job. Mandelson's, I mean, there's so much, this is going to bite me on the backside, but nothing, just this. And when you see him interviewed, which infuriates me, I can't work out whether he's totally dismissive of us, Alarm Clock Britain, and working Brits, or he thinks he's superior, or he thinks he can get away with it. But I come away from them thinking, you don't get it at all, man. You don't get it.
No, I think he thinks that he is just a very, very clever lawyer that's very proud of his history as being Director of Public Prosecutions. He feels as though he's changed the Labour Party. He feels that he's won this great big election as he did 2 years ago.
He did, and he's absolutely stuffed it right down the toilet.
Absolutely, but it has failed, I think, to pick up on the fact that actually, OK, you were quite popular in a couple of years ago, only because...
What, me or him? Sorry.
You're always popular.
Well, no, I don't think I am. Mr. Peel thinks I'm a... What he did, yes.
But Keir Starmer's only won the popularity because of the
it was by default, wasn't it?
But this is the point. You're absolutely right, and your viewers are picking up on it no end today. It's not about the appointment of Peter Mandelson and that vetting issue, because
not now. It's about judgment.
It's about judgment. all of the information about Peter Mandelson that we needed to know was available. The Prime Minister also had a briefing note from the Cabinet Office, the people that run the propriety and ethics team, to say...
How many people do you need to tell you that it's a bad idea, you total idiot?
Exactly.
Was there no... You know this, I speak to Vic. Right, my wife's called Vic. If I was the... I'd talk to... And she'd go to me, are you sure he's a bit of a lemon? That's what that's what would happen, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't get it, mate. I just think it's almost like... I just can't get my head around it. It's either complete idiocy or there's got to be more. And I'm not sitting here trying to, inspire some conspiratorial thing. But yes, he was in Downing Street. He's still got his paws all over this government.
Well, I think it was just quite clear that the team, however Morgan McSweeney sort of wants to distance himself from Peter Mandelson, I think it's pretty clear that the Prime Minister, Peter Mandelson, the inner circle of the PM's team, including that Matthew Doyle,
another one. I mean, another one. And that Emma Lewell that we heard from, I actually heard all of her speech, and she said, I was offended when Kemi Badenoch some months ago said this is a party of pedo apologists, and she actually said, what more can I now think? You think about Matthew Doyle, who had links to a paedophile. They were making suggestions about him being an ambassador, for God's sake.
Yeah. And you talk about the PM's interviews. You're absolutely right. How can anybody take this man seriously when he says that I've done more when I was Director of Public Prosecutions to prosecute paedophiles and
tell
to
that to the victims of Jimmy Savile. Boris Johnson got absolutely slaughtered by every single part of the press. People all over the country, when he dared to stand up and say, you're talking about success. You didn't, and anyway, you can't say that. Do you know what? Do you remember what Starmer said about that Jimmy Savile thing? I remember this distinctly. Him saying, "I had 7,000 solicitors under me." And yet at the same time he was standing there saying, Boris Johnson, you might have thousands in Downing Street, but you're the main man. You should take responsibility. Well, it's turned on him now, and he will not take responsibility. And the British public will not buy this, Charlie. They won't. Not in a million.
Yeah, absolutely right. And when you are in the driving seat, the spotlight is on you, Prime Minister. So don't tell us that you are supporting the victims when you can't. When a national inquiry, a grooming gang scandal comes before your desk, and you refuse to hold a national inquiry into it. Don't tell us then that you're all for the victims and you're going out of your way to support victims of rape and sexual abuse. You're not. Okay, those two don't add up.
No.
So that is why his reputation and the things that he says that his government is doing and what is the actual reality are so far apart now, it seems that he's the only one that's believing his own rhetoric.
Apparently, I've been told in my ear that we have somebody on this morning from the Labour Party who thinks that, is this true, that Keir Starmer's done a good job? God, I can't wait for later. Don't go anywhere. Right, 23 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're live across the UK. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Are you a Starmer fan? Do you think it's time he should go? We'll do Royals in just a tick. But first up, morning, Matt.
Good morning, Jezza. Matt in Warrington, loading a van. So, why is Keir Starmer, the Band 1 Class 1 Whopper, is running around trying to shore up his leadership and whipping all his ministers and that to support him, bullying them all when they really want to vote him out? Our glorious king and queen are out in America patching up the mess and the cock-up that this party, the Labour Party, have done, and giving the Labour Party a lesson in diplomacy, how to do the job properly, how to go out in the big wide world and show the big boys that we're Great Britain. Our king sat there in front of all of America and addressed them, and he did the job right. It made me feel, not in a long time, to be proud to be British again. God save the king, that's what I say.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You don't want to miss Julie, because at 12 o'clock, Prime Minister's Question Time is going to be utterly, utterly spicy. I've got some breaking news, Charlie. I say breaking, we've heard this on the grapevine. This is extraordinary. Apparently, we're hearing from sources that there could well be a reshuffle on the cards in about a week's time. In an attempt, I guess, by our Prime Minister to move the news agenda on. This will be phase 23 or 24. This happened in September. This is Starmer in September, having been found out for some other lie, allegedly. He decided to rephase the whole government. Then have a listen.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction about what we're doing. It needs a more powerful number 10, so we've added to the team with some really important new members. I made a number of other changes, but this is about focus on delivery now, marching forward to the next phase of government.
The biggest recruitment in phase 2 was Peter Mandelson, if we're being absolutely honest. That didn't go very well, did it? Because it started in September and it was for January. That was phase 2. So if there's a reshuffle, maybe Ange will be brought back. I've no idea. Keep your enemies close. And no, is it your friends close, your enemies closer? Yeah, that's why I have you on every day. Because I know you're after my job. Rubbish, man, right? Again, people aren't going to go... If you... I guess there's obviously local council elections, we have to be very careful, but I guess if you're out in the streets at the moment, whatever your political persuasion, people are concerned about their roads, their taxes, their cost of living, paying bills, fuel, holidays... rape gang inquiries, just everything that matters to British people. People that work hard. You know, I don't get it. Working Brits.
Absolutely, and that's why, and you will get, not just Labour MPs, but all MPs from across, the entire political divide say, look, people want to talk about all of those issues, and the government will want to talk about those issues, and of course they will want to talk about that, and they should talk about that, but nobody can listen to those arguments, and nobody would believe those arguments if you've currently got a Prime Minister that's stuck in the mud here when it comes to either misleading the House or when it comes to propriety and ethics, when it comes to making the decisions he's made, when appointing the people that he's made, sacking everybody left, right and centre.
It's only going to work... To me, it's only going to end one way, and we're sort of stuck in... I nearly said libido then. What?
Limbo.
Libido. I looked at Charlie and went, we're stuck in libido. Oh, dear love.
You're thinking about that horse again, aren't you?
Thank you. Morning, Lee.
Morning, Jezza. Lee from Scarborough in his van. Veteran. Well, I have no faith in politics anymore. What a farce. What a cover-up. Mandelson in that job? Really? What an absolute joke. Politics, I just have no more faith in politics. Roll on the election. Let's get this man out.
Couldn't agree more. Morning, Jeremy. I just love the Jezza and Chazza out. You could make this a permanent slot on Talk.
Well, I think it is every Wednesday, isn't it?
Well, there you go. They want more. Pete from Southend. Disinterested means you don't have a horse in the race. You're not invested in the subject. You have a financial interest. Honestly, all right, uninterested is a word. Cliff in Berkshire. The problem with some of our most recent Prime Ministers is that their egos are far bigger than their abilities. That's probably quite true, is it? Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's horses for courses.
Well done.
And this Prime Minister does seem to, having told us one thing, that he'll tread lightly on our lives. Government won't be interfering. That there'll be growth. We haven't seen any of that.
No.
So I think that's probably a fair comment.
Yeah. Now, one of the most interesting messages earlier, which I think is absolutely right, one of the voice notes said that whilst all of this is going on and this country seems stuck in a sort of cycle of misery with a government that can barely do anything. The royal family have taken an awful lot of kickings recently, obviously with Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor and Harry and dreadful Meghan. Sorry, that's my opinion. What the King's managed to do in those few days in America is unbelievable soft diplomacy. He seems to have worked his magic on Donald Trump. The US president has said that Americans have no closer friends than the British. As he hailed the strongest and deepest of roots last night, the King delivered a speech at the White House dinner and then also Charles went to Congress and had 12 standing ovations. Highlight for me was when Trump went, my mother had a crush on you, Chaz. Let's speak to our... Oh, is he royal correspondent today? So not racing, because I was going to ask him about the horseman. Rupert Bell, good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Somebody's got to sort your light out, man. I feel like I'm phoning you in heaven. Are you all right?
I'm absolutely. I always feel a bit washed out, but you know, I've had 3 days on a golf course, so while keeping it. Well, I've been playing Birkdale, Lytham, and Formby. So
Lytham, of course, announced as the British Open course in 2028. Donald Trump. Before we talk Royals, your brother. People might not know this. You don't know this, Charlie, do you? His brother is a very, very well-known trainer. Michael Bell trains for the late Queen and now the King. We had a voice note from a woman this morning who said she'd been up since 5 because she was driving. Did you hear this? You didn't, did you?
No,
she was driving 140 miles with frozen horse sperm for her mare in her stables. Charlie wanted to know if during the 140 miles this would indeed melt, to which she gave us the answer. Now, if you know anything about horses, what was the frozen sperm carried in?
I've no idea. This wasn't on my bingo card for an early morning conversation, I can assure you.
Nitrogen. It doesn't do with us. Nitrogen.
But it's quite a normal process. That it's quite normal. They use it for cattle, all sorts. You know, frozen sperm in the animal world is quite normal. And
there you have it from our royal correspondent. What a lie. You know, actually, the three of us are probably the strongest of royals, and I know that the royal family have taken a pasting recently, Rupert, with much demand for greater transparency and everything that has been Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But by the way, what a fantastic job our King is doing stateside, my friend.
Absolutely, and this sort of soft diplomacy, just going about it. This is probably, in many ways, the most important 4 days of his reign. Something that really cements his status, moving on from the late Queen and showing that he is a force for good for this country, because he has got President Trump, it seems, eating out of his hand, putty in his hands. Although I suppose at the state dinner there was one moment where President Trump went off piece, sort of unwritten laws. You never talk about the conversation that you've had. You sort of, in general terms, referring to the fact that the King may have approved of what he's planning in and doing in Iran. That is sort of never something normal happen, and perhaps that's President Trump unable to completely restrain himself. But overall, it has been so far a success. Just what the royal household wanted. They didn't want any sort of dramas, sort of a sideshow, a soap opera element, and they just wanted to see the King getting, as you say, all those that applause and standing ovations in Congress with a very good speech. Also, that was a funny line about you could have been speaking French if it wasn't for us back in the day. Obviously, he's there to celebrate.
I want to play this. I want to play this clip because the one thing that we should say, he's 77. He is ill. When he just, the approach has been extraordinary. You can see a little cheeky grin. Even when Trump said, you know, my mother had a crush on you, he looked shocked and then he was just doing, you carry on. I think he's got Trump exactly where he wants him. I think he allows him, but then every now and then I imagine in private he sort of brings him back. But this was great. The King talking about the French. Have a watch.
Indeed, you recently commented, Mr. President, that if it were not for the United States, European countries would be speaking German. Dare I say that if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French.
You see, I don't know Donald Trump. I read like the rest of us. He'll love that, won't he, Rupert? Do you know what I mean? You can. I've always thought somebody like Trump you have to face up to. You have to be strong in the face of. I don't know. Maybe I missed the point.
Well, no, I think you're right. You just have to do it in a subtle way. You remember back in, I know, obviously, the correspondence dinner was a controversial, but you go back when President Trump was in the audience, Barack Obama made a pointed reference to him that is thought to be one of the reasons why President Trump decided to run for president, because he didn't see the funny side of a gag that Barack Obama made about him. Whereas this is, reflecting in a very gentle jibe, and that is what King has done very well over these 2 days in his speeches. And actually, the Congress speech actually is quite political in the sense that he's saying you've got support Ukraine, the significance of NATO within the world framework, the importance of Europe and America working together. So it wasn't without political references. And bearing in mind that speech would have been approved by our government, it has to be, because that was, when you're going to something like that,
would they write it, Rupert, or would they tell him what they wanted in it? How would they do that?
I think, there will be discussions as to the tone of it. The King is there to do his government's bidding. That is the point. He's not there as our, Prime Minister. He's there representing the British government, Britain as a whole. Yeah. And so he's got to reflect the views of his government, whether we agree with them or disagree with them. That is his primary function and the significance of the royal family. But this one is so important from a global point of view and representing Britain. And he did it done it magnificently so far, that has had President Trump, as you say, who it's been discovered has been related to the King from way back when. So that will make him feel even better that he's got royal DNA.
I'm not sure about that, because I once saw a programme with Anton Deck who ended up being cousins. I think everybody's probably related to each other, and if you did a show like I used to do, I think everybody probably is. Can I just say, it sounds really weird at 60 to say this. I used to stick up for the then Prince Charles an awful lot, saying that, whilst your destiny in life is simply and will only happen when your mother dies. If you open your mouth, you're interfering. Whilst you're waiting, if you say nothing, you're a waste of space. I think he's really come of age as a king over these last 2 days. I think he's shown himself, as you quite rightly say, Rupert, to be his own man. I think he's handled it brilliantly. I would imagine that this will do more for the royal family positively than almost anything. I mean, I'm getting messages from people now that I would never, saying, wow, he could teach many people in public life, starting with the cabinet, to be fair, an awful lot. And I think for royalists like us, I think that's refreshing to hear.
Absolutely, and I think it is important, because you can say, well, what do you have in replace the system that we have in this country? What is the point of the royal family? This is the point of the royal family. It enables us to go on the global scale, pomp and ceremony, Americans falling all over themselves to be part of it, see it. That is the point of it. It's not it represents the best of Britain.
Let me read you an email, because a text you and I have to deal with good and bad. Richard in Leicester says, your king got 12 standing ovations from the Americans whilst letting his country fall to its knees. Well done, King Charles. You lot at talk are so blinkered. How would you answer that, Rupert?
Well, how else do we think Britain are going to go onto the global stage if we don't have something that actually is attractive to people? And the Americans and President Trump, he's falling over himself to put on the best dinner, turning the White House into looking like an English garden. It is the best of Britain. Absolutely. Look, he can't do anything about what's the political system in this country. That's not his role. He is there as the head of state to do his government's bidding. And if this country, whatever we think of the government of the time, that the king or the late Queen had to keep their thoughts to themselves and just go on. And that's why you have the opening of the Parliament. There he is reading what his government is going to do in the next session of Parliament, whether we, as I say, agree with it or disagree with it. It has been the system in place, and here he is going out representing Britain, trying to smooth over the troubled waters. But trouble is, what we do know is that as soon as he goes, President Trump will moon on, and then maybe have every chance that it'll be starting the slings and arrows between him and Keir Starmer. We'll be back to the fore again. And, once we have the elections next week, and if it's as predicted, maybe the Labour government take an absolute shellacking at the local elections, is what people are suggesting, then we'll see President Starmer wade in with further... not President Starmer.
President Starmer!
That's a Freudian slip if ever there was one. But anyway, President Trump will be starting again to sort of put his penny's worth with regard to what he thinks about the British government, which he's not frightened of saying. But I think overall, if you just look at what's happening so far over these 2 or 3 days, the King, even if he's feeling a little bit under the weather, my goodness me, he's hiding it. He'll be going over to Bermuda at the end of the week, I think, for a couple of days, again, representing Britain, but which will seem like a welcome relief, because this is an intense 4 days for him, representing this country with a spotlight on him like never before.
Rupert, absolutely spot on as ever, my friend, and thank you so much. Really good to hear from you. Rupert Bell, Talks Royal correspondent, spot on about what an amazing job the King's doing, Charlie.
Absolutely, and what a very apt name, Rupert Bell, because the gift that King Charles gave to Donald Trump was a bell.
Why are you doing that with your hand? What sort of... He gave him a bell? Why did he give him a bell?
As a gift. It was from HMS Trump.
Don't ever say H. I can't have H. It's not H. Nobody ever says H. HMS.
HMS Trump.
You don't go...
Jeremy, I'm uninterested.
Oh, you disinterested boy. I'll tell you what might interest you is this. This is extraordinary. This is from Christian, if you hate this next bit. Birds in cities fear women more than men. This is research. On average, men were able to get 7.5 metres near an urban bird before they took flight, a metre closer than women. To establish which was more menacing, pairs of men and women were recorded walking straight towards birds, well, pigeons, starlings and other bird life in urban parks. The birds consistently allowed men to get closer than women.
Well, there you are.
So birds prefer men than other birds?
Yes. Well, there's... I don't know. I can't think of anything to draw a link between. Why? Yes, men and birds.
Have you ever got within 7.5 metres of a bird?
Not if I can help it.
Oh, there we go. I love having you on. When are you on again?
Next Wednesday.
Tomorrow. Just come back every day.
Just
pop in every day. Fantastic of you. On a very serious note, just to finish, we've talked about this incessantly. We've only got a minute. Do you believe after the local elections somebody will move against Starmer or not?
I think they will, but I actually think the person that has got the power, it is Angela Rayner, because if it is the case that he offers her a job back to Cabinet, she can refuse it. That might look good or bad on her, depending on what kind of base you're supporting within the Labour Party. If she takes it and shores up his credentials, there's no one else to really challenge him. She's either keeping the Prime Minister in post, and that would be good for him. Would it be good for the country? Would it be good for the government? Who knows? Or does she say, no, actually, I don't think I can join you because of all...
Don't forget the news. We've heard there will be a reshuffle in about a week. It's the phase 27 of this new government that's been in for two years. He did it last year. He said, we brought in new talent, phase 2 of the government. He brought in Mandelson, and that's almost brought him down. Fantastic. We love you. Are you going home now?
I am, yes.
If you could do the washing, yeah? And hoover up.
I'm having a kitchen delivered. I'm having a new kitchen. So,
really?
Let's see how that goes.
Are you putting it in yourself?
No. Don't be ridiculous.
You're not putting it in yourself?
Not on this occasion.
No. OK, well, there we go. We're live across the UK. Coming next, by the way, after the news at 7, massively important. Former Conservative Party leaders Ian Duncan Smith on all things going on. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. This is Talk Breakfast. We're live across the United Kingdom, and the news at 7 is next.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'd like to provide the House with information that I now have about the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the United States. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go into the details, I want to be very clear with this House that while this statement will focus on the process surrounding Peter Mandelson's vetting and appointment, at the heart of this, there is also a judgment I made that was wrong.
The name had been submitted to the King as Minister's recommendation. The Prime Minister had made an announcement that Mandelson was his nominee without caveats. The British government had sought agrément, the formal diplomatic process for a host government accepting a nominee from the US government, and that had been obtained before I arrived in post. The position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSB recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back and welcome along. Just gone 7 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. You're very welcome to Talk Breakfast. This, of course, the home of common sense and the home of you, the alarm clock. Brett, don't know where you're at, don't know what you're doing, but you're very welcome to the show that says we want your views on the news of the day. 0344 499 1000. Voice notes welcome. Live calls you can text 87222. I'm sorry, it is all about Starmer and it's all about King Charles. Starmer, major rebellion last night. Over 65 or 70 people not voting in his favour. Many saying, so you whipped your own MPs to cover your own back. If you are truthful about what you're saying, that this is completely and utterly easy to explain, why would you not refer yourself to this committee and get it done? Because this country at this moment is absolutely stuck and nobody wants to talk about anything other than that. Dan Bourne, Jez, every MP that voted in Starmer's favour has demonstrated they don't believe in scrutiny or accountability. Westminster is rotten to the core. Cliff in Worcester, brilliant coverage as ever. Starmer has shown that he has zero integrity, and to me, in essence, it's an admission of guilt of misleading the House to use that whip last night. I'll tell you what, Dan, this is a voice note. This is absolutely brilliant. Dan, good morning.
Morning, Jezza. It's Dan from Kent. So, dictator Stalin flexes his muscles, if he has any, and forces his MPs to vote against an inquiry on himself. Find him a bit more time, but we all know he's toast. Now, you would have thought, Prime Minister, you could use the same tactic to force in policies that could help the economy, bring down welfare spending, stop illegal immigration, but you won't.
It's a really interesting point, isn't it? You instigate a rule in the House whereby if you're the boss, you can, it's called a three-line whip. You can say to your MPs, you vote as I tell you or you'll lose your job. This vote is about whether he's covered up something, whether he's misled the House. Later on, we'll have Dan Hodges, who's been brilliant on this from the Mail, forensically cutting this to shreds. He said the other day on the show that Starmer has lied 7 times. If there's nothing to hide, you don't impress upon your MPs what they need to do, because what that does is that smacks of guilt. And I've said it repeatedly, absolutely repeatedly. Let's go to Lincolnshire. I want to get some calls on today as well. Ben, good morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Jeremy. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. What you got for me?
Oh, there's a bloody bunch of reprehensible idiots in Parliament. I mean, it gets even worse, doesn't it? So how can you use the whip to force through that policy yesterday? The whip's there to force through policies that the public might not quite like, right? And yet there's the words fail me as to what our Prime Minister is actually playing at. It's just absolutely.
But I mean, you'd have to look at it, and you'd have to say he is looking at self-preservation, which is maybe some people in politics will say that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, as Dan quite rightly said on Voice Note, when in this country right now, whether people like this or not, this is not the rantings of some madman. We have a completely failing NHS service. We've got a border situation that is the embarrassment of the world. We have no military. There's world war everywhere and we're not able to defend ourselves. Law and order is out of the game. People shoplift. The police are nowhere to be seen. The education system's been hijacked by what I best describe as ideology. This country is not... And bear in mind that every single person who's listening to this and paying their taxes, everything's going up. Food, energy, whatever. Everybody's feeling the cost. Nobody can pay their bills. Nobody can save a penny. It's bloody hard. And in all of that, you want somebody, whatever their political persuasion, to stand in front of you and say, look, I get it. I'm going to do everything for you. We don't have that with this government. What we have with this man is, I'm going to do everything to save my own backside. That's not good enough, is it? Not good enough.
Well, we don't have those politicians at all any longer. I suppose Rupert Lowe seems to have a lot of integrity, and I'd like to think he can go far. But that we don't have the big hitters. But I couldn't stand Tony Benn's politics, but the bloke had some real serious integrity, and those people don't exist anymore. You look back
at that, and I've had this discussion many times, and completely with you. Love her or loathe her, Margaret Thatcher had conviction. Love him or loathe him, in the end, Tony Blair had conviction. He had a vision. We don't have that now. I think we are beset by politicians who don't open their mouths until a focus group tells them what they should say or what they shouldn't say. They don't have it in them gutturally. There's a great word. In their guts to say, I'm going to read the room. I'm going to read the vibe. Listen, thank you, Ben. Great story. I'll tell you who is a politician of conviction. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. He should have been the Prime Minister of this country. Sir Ian Duncan Smith, a very good morning. How are you? Oh, we've got no sound. Oh, sorry. I don't know what we're doing. It's just one of those things. Are we going to have luck? I'll keep going. Oh, there you go. Here he is, you see. I mean, how could you have been the Prime Minister if you can't even turn the volume button on, Sir Ian?
It's a long story, but anyway.
My friend, thank you so much indeed. I know we're going to talk in a bit about this fantastic article you've written in The Sun, but I obviously, from a man of your experience, the offices that you've held, last night... so many of my viewers and listeners and so many of the media today questioning the validity of telling your MPs you will vote to save me from standing in front of a privileged committee, despite the fact I've told you and the whole world there's no cover-up. They're all saying one thing. If there's no cover-up, why do you not refer yourself and put this aside so you can get on with dealing with the rubbish that's going on in this country, Sir Ian?
Well, let's be, first of all, very clear about this. The Prime Minister faced, despite the whip, a major rebellion last night. Some 50 people abstained, and a number also voted against. And considering that they had gone into their evil arts and been whipping and bullying and threatening everybody, that they had to vote on what normally is an unwhipped motion. If somebody is being put forward to go to the Privileges Committee, it's meant to be for parliamentarians to exercise their judgment without government privilege. And therefore,
can I ask you quickly, when it happened to Boris Johnson, was the Tory party whipped?
No, and in fact there was no vote in the end because it was agreed that he should go through to the Privileges Committee. You know, it's a very simple fact of life. The government then at the time, they may not have been happy about it, but they were told essentially, your backbenchers think this ought to happen, and they did. They let it through. This is very typical about Labour. They were moaning and attacking us at that stage. But now, when the boot's on the other foot, they literally, brutally went after every single MP. Now, I happen to think that MPs should have the courage when necessary to rebel when you think the moment is right. But, you know, many of them were really pushed hard, and I know, and I talked to many of them behind the scenes. That notwithstanding, for 50 of them did not vote to support the government. Now, the government's saying, well, look, many of them were let off. No, because if you look at the following vote, the next vote on something completely different, they went back up to 355 votes, which meant they were in the House of Commons when they abstained, which means they came back to the House of Commons to not vote for the Prime Minister. So that was a rebellion. So it's the biggest rebellion they've had, and I have to tell you, it means that Starmer really is now, I think, days to do.
Can I ask you, you know, yesterday we saw the other Foreign Office Mandarin, Sir Philip Barton, who left his post, replaced by Ollie Robbins. Ollie Robbins last week saying, you know, I was just told get this done irrespective. I think Barton yesterday said that there seemed to be, Number 10 was uninterested in the vetting process. They wanted this done. Then we saw McSweeney. I don't know if you heard, did you read Quentin Lett's description of McSweeney? It was extraordinary.
I haven't had a chance to read his one, but I did have to say that I thought this whole thing was obviously stitched up before he even went in there.
But there was no gravitas, and people aren't buying it. My question to you is, I've always been. So let me read this to you. You love this, Ian. Quentin Letts, Labour's chief poisoner proved an underwhelming tiddler, a shaking bag of nerves in a suit surely from M&S schoolwear range, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that's. I'm afraid that's what politics now too often has come to, is those behind the politicians advise like mad, and yet they've never been through life. I always think that the best advice you get is from people that have lived a hard, tough life and know what it's like to be down, know what it's like to be up, know what it's like to take tough decisions. You know, my father fought all the way through the war, 5 gallantry medals. His advice was the advice I almost always went to when I wasn't sure, because the guy had been in combat for 5 years and got through the other end. And I mean, that sort of advice is proper advice, not some bloke that's never taken a risk, never taken a big decision, never fought anybody for any particular reason. These are, I mean, I'm afraid the whole place is filled with minnows these days. People
completely. I just wanted to get more from you on the 3-line whip thing last night. Does that, in your mind, although you're on the opposition bench, does that instigation of the 3-line whip cause resentment amongst the backbenchers? And also, along with that question, does that mean that he will ultimately face a bigger rebellion down the line?
Yeah, I think 2 things. First of all, there's no question that the backbenchers, and we talk to each other. I know many of the Labour MPs, get on all right with them. We work together over amendments and things like that. So, but I know what Whip's office does when things are desperate. They employ all the dark arts they can, the threats, the I know what you've been up to over here, and then the leaning on them. If you don't do this, I swear to God, you won't be reselected for the next election. You know, there's all this sort of stuff goes on. It's what's been going on since time immemorial. The key thing, though, when I've rebelled over Maastricht, for example, many years ago, within about I think, a year of, well, actually, it was the first vote that I ever faced. I rebelled on. But when you really believe that something is wrong, you have to stand by your belief and your character. You were sent there for your judgment, not to be just a person that trails through the lobbies for other reasons. Of course, you're there to support the manifesto stuff, but this is not manifesto stuff. This is about judgment of a prime minister who, frankly, I have to say, I think, is the nowhere man. Somebody said to me the old rhyme the other day, the other day upon the stair I met a man that was not there. He was not there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away. Starmer.
Do you think he will be gone before the end of the year?
It's difficult to say because Labour has a very peculiar system to try and get rid of their leaders and their prime ministers. For the Conservative Party, frankly, we make it far too easy.
Yes, I was going to say.
We change underwear, really. But the main problem, which is not very good, it's destabilising. But for Labour, they have to have this huge number of MPs that publicly, I think it's about 81.
Yeah.
They have to come out publicly and support a person. So somebody has to put themselves up. And I think, if I'm not wrong, then the major vote would have to take place sometime around the conference or the conference itself, any final vote. It's very difficult, which is why they've never got rid of a single leader or a prime minister since the Second World War.
Well, there is a lot of rumour today that Starmer, I know we've had phase 20, we were playing a clip earlier of phase 2 last September, new staff being brought in, big announcement, that was Mandelson, phase 2's a disaster. Anyway, there is a rumour that there will be a reshuffle in about a week. And stories this morning, Ian, that Starmer has privately offered Angela Rayner a return to cabinet, despite the fact that the Angela Rayner hasn't paid a stamp duty. The one who said Boris was right to resign to uphold ministerial standards. It's very interesting. You must be looking forward to Angela Rayner's return, because the papers will say she's either going to be given a plum cabinet job or will be replacing the man in number 10.
Yeah, this is a woman that, by and large, had to step away and leave because she had major tax problems with the inland revenue. And I think this is also what's meant that she's not been able to get back. So if you look at the people who've had to go from the cabinet, you can see quite carefully there's a whole series of misdemeanours. They're not politically challenging to the Prime Minister, but they either seem to have hidden a bunch of telephones and made illegal claims, or they've got tax problems, etc.
That's not my favourite. Come on, the corruption minister being fired because she's been charged with corruption in Bangladesh has to be the best one. Tulip Sadiq. Wow.
And then people who are responsible for making sure people get housing also then end up making people homeless.
Yeah.
I mean, all these sort of things are all about, do what I say, not what I do. Mm-hmm. And I think Rayner was in the same boat. So I don't really know. But if the Prime Minister has to bring her back, it shows you what an appalling state his own leadership is in. If the people that he really felt were challenging him the whole time had to be brought in because he's so weak.
Final question on Starmer before we move to your wonderful article today. You don't have to answer this, you might not. Do you think he lied and misled Parliament?
There's no question in my book that he did mislead Parliament. Whether he did it knowingly, deliberately, with intention, or whether he did it because he assumed that what he was saying was correct, is the bit that the vote was about yesterday. My view is that Parliament was misled about all of this. It's the same view for most of the people in the opposition yesterday evening. And, Boris Johnson was brought to the Privileges Committee. I don't understand what their fear is over the Privileges Committee, because what are you against? If you believe that you did it all right, it shouldn't really matter if you go to the Privileges Committee, because they'll look at it, and if they see that, then they'll just clear you. It's this fear that they'll uncover what really happened.
This is fantastic, your article, page 10 today in The Sun. 6 million workers, this will absolutely resonate with you, alarm clock Brits. 6 million workers earn less than many jobless claimants. That is a scandal that fails everyone who pays taxes. He might not be your favourite person, but Nigel Farage said something the other day that really, I think, is relevant to this. He said that the nation's biggest societal divide right now is not based on money, race or religion, but those that work and those that don't work. And whenever we get into this debate, Ian, people will say, oh, you're having a go. No, I'm not. But it is absolutely outrageous, as you highlight today, that now you can choose not to work, and there are feckless, lazy people who are better off than those who get up like alarm clock Brits and go and earn a crust. Disgusting in anybody's book.
Yeah, the problem is that COVID hit us like a steam train, because before that, when I left, I resigned. But what we had was the lowest number of workless households since records began. We had millions going back into work. And the reality was that the result was the money that we spent on welfare had fallen quite significantly. Now, what happened is COVID meant that the government had to spend money ridiculously. But they should have clawed it back almost immediately, and we should have got this thing back up and running after COVID. The problem has been, therefore, that two things have happened, which I think is the major problem. The problem you've pointed out here, which is because now of COVID, people are claiming on sickness benefit at a level and at a rate for things that they weren't in such great numbers before. Mostly on this, the big threat is mental health problems. And the two biggest issues, and probably the biggest claims at the moment on this, are depression and anxiety. And the point that I make in the article is that the health service itself says that the major cure to depression is work, and the same for anxiety. If you sit at home because you're supposedly depressed, then you'll just get worse. So what you need to do is get to work. Work is the key to a functional life. And that's why when universal credit's brought in, for the first time ever, we can see whole households now. We could only ever see individuals before. Now we know what the earnings in a household are. So we really need to get after households where nobody is earning outside of the benefit system. And that's the area the government's got to go on to. And the point that I'm making in this article, which is even Tony Blair has now come out and said this government has got to change the welfare problem, because they will not be able to afford all the other key things. And British people will be taxed, and taxed again. And you can see what's happening to the economy about it.
I'm old-fashioned, and I've said this every single day. I think it says an awful lot about this country and the people in it that we are and have always been prepared to do our bit for people who are less fortunate. And I am more than happy to pay my taxes. But unless we, in a civilised way, have a debate written so eloquently by you today, where we say quite simply this: there are people gaming the system who are then taking money away from other genuine claimants. It was never, when I left schooling, it was work or college. Now it's work or college or sign on. It was not meant to be better than grafting. It's such a wrong message, I think. I was going to ask you in sort of alongside that, because of the benefits argument. We read today that a massive 2.2 million extra migrants will arrive in the UK in the next 8 years. That means the UK's population will peak more than 40 years earlier than previously thought, hitting a high of 72.5 million in 2054. ONS data also reveals that deaths will outnumber births for the first time this year. The problem with immigration, that is also having a profoundly negative effect on the welfare benefits bill, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's no question. It's not, it's not all migrants, but illegal migrants themselves, migration generally, of course, has put major pressure on the welfare system, because once they're here, and if they're given permission to stay, then they have access to the welfare system. In fact, far too many get access even before any of their cases are cleared. The real problem we've got, though, is, and the birth rate for British citizens has been falling, and that needs to go back up if we're to get the whole thing restabilised. But the key problem is that if we keep on bringing in, a city the size of Leicester or whatever it is every year, then we're going to have a problem, because all the systems then expand to help all of those people, many of who come in with illnesses and sicknesses themselves. Some of the rise.
Do you think we become a soft touch, genuinely?
Well, yeah, there's no question that's what's become the case, because, first of all, on the welfare system, COVID, we didn't reverse the COVID checks. For example, I kept telling the government at the time, it was my government, I said, for God's sake, get back to face-to-face checks. Do not allow people just to sit there and do it online. The key thing is that we have these advisors. They can see when they sit down with somebody whether they're really doing what they do. I had a thing called the claimant commitment, which is really a kind of contract, where I had on one side what the claimant needed to do, that they had to look for work, take any job that is given to them, not to make themselves willfully unemployed, otherwise they would lose their benefit, and what the government would do, which is to help them seek work and to support them. And that was a commitment. They signed that, so that was their agreement with them. That has been suspended. They need to make sure that process is back in face-to-face with the advisors. Little things like that, strangely enough, would have a major effect on people's failure to turn up, failure to make the position clear to them as to what they've actually earned. All of that process allows us to do this. And now that sickness benefit is universal credit, we can do it. We can see people over their depression and their anxiety claims and get them back into work, to say, look, the best process for you is to be back in work with some support, not to pay them the benefit, but to use some of that money to be able to bring advisors and support for them to get into work. And that's the key bit. Work is a health treatment for those suffering from depression, anxiety, and even to a degree ADHD.
Could not agree more. Listen, it's always an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you, sir. We had a few technical problems, but thank you, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, the voice of reason in a mad, mad world. Former Conservative Party leader. Thank you so much indeed. 7:25. We're live across the UK. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. You're waking up to Starmer, cornered, had to bribe, basically, his MPs, so that he didn't actually lose a vote to appear in front of a privileges committee, but we'll find out whether he's telling the truth. He says he is. We'll just refer yourself there. The King has absolutely got Donald Trump eating out his left hand. Morning, Liam.
Morning, Jezza and Charlie. It's Liam in his lorry. Out paying my taxes and delivering bits and bobs all up and down the country. Keir Starmer. Well, this is socialism for you, innit? I didn't do nothing wrong. It's always somebody else's fault. This man and this party are sinking faster than the Titanic did. I think the best thing they could all do is quietly fade off and just leave, or just go somewhere else other than number 10 and number 11. That'd do us all a real big favour. Anyway, have a great morning, guys.
Sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall! Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now.
You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
You're with Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to 7:28. You are wound up to the top notch this morning with Keir Starmer. My mate Rob in Newcastle doesn't mince his words. Went to bed in the UK, Jez. Feel I woke up in North Korea. How can it be in a democracy where apparently free speech means everything to everybody, except in the place it matters most, the House of Commons, where we vote to send the people who would like to stand up and do their duty? These people are supposed to be honest, standout citizens that we respect and look up to, yet the leader has an option to override truth and honesty and do it publicly in front of the world and think it's okay. I am now ashamed of this country. It's beyond disgusting, and the man couldn't care less. He cares for no one but himself. Shame on him and shame on everybody that voted for him, including those Labour MPs. There's real anger tonight. I get it. Let's say good morning to Adam. Morning, Ad.
Hi, Jezza.
This is Adam from sunny Bournemouth. I was the one that come up to you yesterday when you were in the garage. That was me, my friend. Anyway, just on Keir Starmer, mate, he lied from the start. When I mean the start, I don't just mean when he was standing in front of number 10. He lied on the manifesto, and he's lied ever since. And the problem with this is, when you lie, you have to lie again, and you have to keep lying, and that's the problem. And anyway, mate, great show as always. Keep up the great fight, Jezza.
Lovely to see him yesterday. I thought he was going to pay him a petrol, diesel, because it's obviously so expensive. But lovely man, and very nice to see you. Thank you for your support down there in Bournemouth. He said, "Where do you live?" I thought, I'm getting in the car. I'm not telling him that. Follow me home. Good man, though, Ad. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning to Chris in Epsom. Morning, Christoph.
Morning, Jezza. Great show, mate. Yesterday, I watched the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Thornbury. I watched them give evidence for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Then I switched to the debate in the House of Commons, and I watched the whole debate. I was interested to see what people said. Your Labour MP friend, Carl, showed the integrity that all MPs should have with his speech in the debate, as did you mention the female MP. I've forgotten her name.
Emma Lowell, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic speeches. And I think Kemi Badenoch had possibly one of her best days in the House yesterday. And I actually felt that it was so obvious that he should refer himself to Starmer, refer himself to the Privileges Committee, that I actually felt that the Labour MPs would vote against him. Yeah. They obviously absolutely smashed, because there was no way, after watching 7 hours of that debate yesterday, there was no way in hell could anybody not agree that he needs to go in front of the...
And do you know what's really interesting that I was thinking about actually just earlier, and then it's come up again as you're talking? So we heard from Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, a man I respect enormously as a politician, as a parliamentarian, who said that, you know, if you whip your MPs, you're almost giving the impression that you don't want to be in front of that committee. So if you referred yourself, but also what that does, it breeds resentment. He was telling us how whips will go around saying, "Oh, mate, I've got this on you," or "You'll be deselected next time." But I wonder how many MPs over the next... Well, I would have thought they would have sussed out yesterday. Will go, if we carry on with this man... Our jobs are toast anyway, mate, because we're going to be obliterated, so maybe we should stand up for what we believe. But more important than that, Chris, do they not care what the British public think? Because I keep going back to this, which I don't get. I don't know whether this Labour government doesn't care, thinks it's too important, thinks it's got 5 years, doesn't want a future. The silent majority absolutely know what this man is, and they will now make a judgment on those sheep Labour MPs who did what they were told against, I suspect, their better judgment. That's a massive problem for them.
Well, Jez, I make you absolutely right, but I felt the fulcrum came yesterday in the debate. I felt that they would understand, the Labour MPs would understand that if he doesn't go in front of the Privileges Committee, they're going to go on the doorstep asking for votes, and they're going to get that thrown in their face. It is going to come back and bite them so hard that as far as I'm concerned, the Labour Party now have trashed any legitimacy they had whatsoever.
It's really interesting to me. I've got to move on, but imagine this. In the space of 2.5 short years, buddy, we have looked at and discussed the possibility that the two parties that have ruled this country for decades are not going to not exist, but both are, I mean, the Tories were obliterated from where they were. The same will happen with Labour, and that's why we're in what we're in. Chris in Epsom, thank you so much indeed. Just gone 7:30. That's the chair arm, by the way. I don't quite know what's going on there. And I know, what a strange noise. Morning, Jez. Oh, no. Oh, God. Zarina, lovely. Why can't the government link the benefits to work? Yeah, we'll do that later. Yeah, well, I'm going to do all of those benefit calls. I completely agree. It's lots to talk about, Ian. Ian Duncan-Smith, I just want to go, if I can, to the political editor of The Independent. Great to have him on this morning. David Maddox, good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning, Jerry, mate. Fine. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, but I don't think I've ever... I mean, I try and come in every day hoping that we won't discuss Keir Starmer because it bores the bits off me. But these people are beyond infuriated. And I'm going to ask you, David, something that I've asked everybody this morning. And you're a political, you're switched on. I'm not. Does anybody around Starmer, or even Starmer himself with his precious Vic, not understand the depth of anger, the depth of feeling that it is a cover-up, that it's a stitch-up? Do they not understand that he's mortally wounded by this? It's done. I've always thought with the British people that when you lose them, you lose them. And has he not lost them, David? I think he has by a mile, man.
To be honest, I think he'd lost them a long time ago. He didn't need this latest scandal at all. I mean, it's been 2 miserable years for him and for the Labour Party. I mean, I actually think we're kind of hitting... I think you hit the nail on the head, actually. I think we're hitting kind of existential levels of crisis for Labour because, they were out of office for 14 years and they've been given one last chance. They've been given this chance, amazing chance with a big majority. They've blown it at every corner, every turn. And it's... this latest scandal with Mandelson's just got worse and worse and worse. It just undermines any idea of integrity and judgment. And what happened last night, I have to say, I'm a reporter normally. I just report the news, but it was pretty shocking. I don't remember a government covering itself like that, whipping its MPs, forcing them to stop an investigation, not to say he was guilty, but to stop an actual investigation.
But why? But David, that's the point. Why would you stop an investigation? Why would you not refer yourself if you say you're inside? What I love about your comment is summed up by Phil in Nottingham, and this is just a shot at the hundreds of similar messages I've had. Phil, whipping your MPs to vote a certain way. I thought we lived in a democracy. This sounds more like a bloody dictatorship. Surely we elect our local MPs to represent us. So if they then cannot vote on what they believe we want, what is the damn point in having this system in the first place?
Well, this is it. And also, Parliament's kind of run by convention rather than rules.
Yeah.
And it's basically doing the honourable thing, doing the right thing. And that was, when the Tories were in this position, for all the criticism about the Tories, when they were in this position with Boris Johnson, they just allowed the investigation to happen. There wasn't even a vote.
Yep.
Their MPs on that committee, on the Privileges Committee, investigated it properly, came to the conclusions fairly. They put, as somebody said to me, they put integrity before party.
Yep.
On that, and Labour have just turned that on its head, and it's going to cause problems. I saw the shame on you sort of social media stuff going out last night already on Labour MPs who had voted to stop it. They're going to get a lot more of this going forward.
Now, what I want the viewers to know about you, Mr. Maddox, is, and this is fascinating, because we played a clip earlier about how phase 2 of this government started in September, a rebrand. That didn't go very well with Mandelson. We're talking about allegedly there'll be another reshuffle and another new phase in a minute. But you, via your contacts as a journalist at The Independent, alerted Number 10 back in September. You told Number 10 that Mandelson had failed the vetting, but nobody apparently in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, nobody in the Cabinet Office, nobody else in the whole goddamn world told Starmer, I'd make it my business. I think there are other reasons why he got the job. You actually told them, David.
Yes, yeah. Well, there you are. You're actually put my text messages up there, which I published.
Yep. Hi, Tim. I've been told by two.
I was astonished when The Guardian kind of redid my story 7 months later. And then, Keir Starmer comes out and says, I only found out this week. And I was just saying, hold on. And he said, Downing Street only found out this week. And, I go back.
You sent that on the 11th. You sent that text message. Yeah. Am I allowed to ask who to?
Yes, it was to the Director of Communications, or the then Director of Communications, Tim Allen. You could see hi, Tim, at the start of that message.
If you're listening on the radio, David Maddox, political editor of The Independent, sent this on the 11th of September 2025 to the then head of communications, Tim Allen, at 10 Downing Street. Hi, Tim. I've been told by 2 sources now that Mandelson, in fact, did not clear vetting with MI6, but the PM pushed his appointment anyway. The problem was China, not Epstein, though. Is there any comment on this? The response was, vetting done by FCDO in normal way.
Yeah.
So you, my God, the man's up to his neck in it, isn't he, David?
Yeah. I mean, so it's patently not true that Downing Street didn't know until a couple of weeks ago. It's just not true. I mean, there are all sorts of other issues in what the things he said and told Parliament in the last couple of weeks, which, really kind of, there are a lot of question marks over what he's saying.
So you'd agree with Dan Hodges, who was on this show on Monday, saying he genuinely, definitely believes that he's misled or lied to Parliament and the British people on 7 occasions minimum.
I think so. Yes, I think so. But there ought to be an investigation into it. There ought to be a kind of proper consideration, but they've blocked that. And I think, as your listeners were reflecting, people were, in fact, I came home last night and my family said, not particularly political, but a kind of a reaction was the same. Well, if he was innocent, he wouldn't be worried about an investigation. So,
and that's my point. You and Dan and journalists that you have the utmost respect for, but I keep asking the same question. Does he not care what people think? Are they that incompetent and lacking in any political nous, DNA, whatever you want to call it, that they don't just sense what's going on? Because it's done. It's over. It's done.
This government is so far in the bunker, it's in so much political trouble that, he's destroying careers, throwing people under the bus, sacking people left, right and centre. He's, he'll do what is necessary to survive now. And this is all about survival. But I mean, I'm afraid I don't think it's going to last much longer. We've got these local and devolved elections coming up on May the 7th. And I suspect that's the point when Labour MPs are going to have to kind of take a deep breath.
But then, of course, I was speaking to Ian Duncan Smith, who made the point that, there are polar opposites. The Tories changed their leader like they changed their underwear, but actually there's no precedent. Labour has never really done this before. We had rumours this morning that he's apparently privately offered Angela Rayner a return to Cabinet to maybe head off, if you like, one of those that might try and take his crown. But anybody with a brain cell, David, just looks at this now and goes, well, who's next, right? Who's next?
I mean, I think Labour MPs, come May the 8th, will be asking the question, can this man win us the next election? Can he save us from complete obliteration? And if the answer is no, which most people would suspect it probably is, then they will move. The trouble is that the obvious candidate actually to replace him isn't an MP, and that's Andy Burnham. And he's kept him out. Again, he personally ensured that Andy Burnham couldn't return to Parliament for this very reason.
What do you make of Angela Rayner and the other? I mean, for God's sake, it could be Ed Miliband. I mean, that's frightening in itself. Rejected resoundingly by the British people in 2015.
Yeah, it could be Ed Miliband. He's certainly popular within the party. I mean, Labour MPs kind of have a Marmite attitude to him. They either love him or hate him. It could be Angela Rayner. It could Wes Streeting is still kind of hoping. I think it's very unlikely. I think he's considered too right wing. But the one to kind of look out for him, but keep on being told is Al Khan's this defence.
Well, now this is really interesting because I brought this up yesterday, David. I'd like to ask you. People are shaking their heads, but he's the security minister. Don't get me on the Troubles bill. I think that's the most disgusting piece of legislation, and I don't think he supports it. But he was away the other night from the Troubles bill. The Securities and Armed Forces Minister. Many have said he is on resignation watch and could be, if you like, a stalking horse. You've heard that as well, right?
Yeah, I have, and a lot of MPs rate him, especially in that kind of 2024 intake. I mean, I've met him on a number of occasions. He's a very impressive individual, former Royal Marines commander and all the rest of it. My only question is whether he would have the kind of base within the Labour Party to kind of have a proper leadership push or not, because he doesn't come from a trade union background or one of the kind of traditional left backgrounds. So, but yeah, he's certainly an impressive man.
So your view, you said, is in kilter really with Dan Hodges from the Mail. You believe that Starmer has lied to both the House and to the public. You believe he will be replaced, though, David, to be fair.
I think the likelihood is he will. I mean, the converse thing is, if Labour MPs bottle it, if they don't replace him, then they are probably going to be stuck with him to the next election, and that could be, well, I mean, unless there's some kind of Lazarus-type resurrection in their poll ratings and respect for this government, then that could spell really bad news for them. I mean, worse than what the Tories had in the last election.
All right, mate. Listen, thank you so much. It's great to have you on. Let's get you on more regularly. The brilliant David Maddox there, Chief Political Editor of The Independent. Thank you very much indeed. 8:45. Are we going to a break or a call? We're going to a break. Back in 3 minutes, apparently.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, my friends. It is 8:45. We're live across the UK. You're very welcome to Talk Breakfast, the home of common sense and the home of alarm clock Brits. They are having their say about Keir Starmer's government this morning. Morning, Dan.
Morning, Jezza. Dan from Bedfordshire here. So we are living in a communist state. Keir Jong-un refusing to take any responsibility for anything he's done. And his Muppet MPs refusing to throw him under the bus or make him even face the consequences. Country's gone, mate. Country's gone. Have a good day.
What a happy old Wednesday it is here. 8:45. I try and get all sides. We say a very good morning to Henry Murison. I hope I've got this right, Murison. Former Labour advisor. Henry, welcome to Talk Breakfast. How are you?
Lovely to join you, Jeremy.
Now CEO of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. Jake Berry was part of that. Well done, my friend. Henry, whenever we've spoken in the past, you've been honest. This is an utterly appalling government right now, isn't it? This man, to whip your own MPs so that you don't have to go in front of a privileges committee while saying that you're innocent, why not refer yourself, man, and get it done?
I think the presentation of this clearly hasn't gone well for the Prime Minister, but there are obviously already processes in train. There's the humble address with lots of documents that will show whether the Prime Minister has been straight or not. There's also the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Do you think he's been straight? Serious question. We've listened to Ollie Robbins say there was pressure. We listened to Philip Barton saying the government was uninterested in the vetting process. We've seen McSweeney take the bullet, if you like. This comes down not to a government that hasn't delivered. This comes down to the integrity of a man. Every single newspaper this morning talks about complicit in the cover-up. Do you believe that Keir Starmer misled the House of Commons and the British people?
I think he made a terrible decision in appointing Peter Mandelson, but I don't think that makes him a liar. And I think that the nature of this debate is that clearly out here in the real world, and lots of your listeners do care about this. I've been listening this morning, as I'm sure others have, to lots of people who don't like Keir Starmer. But I think the real reason they don't like Keir Starmer is because of the cost of living challenges, because of the challenges affecting them in their everyday lives. I think this is still largely a kind of something that you and I take an interest in lots of detail. Of course, we will argue about the details of it. And I might argue that last night was a political stunt by the Conservative Party.
Was it?
Actually,
how is it a political stunt?
I mean, I think that they always knew that there isn't yet the evidence to go for an inquiry of this kind. The reality is that...
But the evidence, with the greatest respect, Henry, and we like each other, the evidence stacks up. You've got the old head of the civil service saying it was get him in at all costs. It was get him in before the inauguration. He then leaves. Then the next one, whose job's already been thrown out, literally says, I was told to get the hell on with it at all costs. Those are facts. He stood in the House of Commons and said, no pressure did I put on those people. That's two people in the civil service saying, yes, he did.
Ollie also said, to be fair, Jeremy, that he didn't think he was under no pressure to get a particular outcome from the vetting just to make sure it was done quickly. And I think anyone in government, and I think Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, said this on the media round yesterday. The Prime Minister's point of argument, and I think where they have actually got a point, is that no one was saying get this answer from the vetting. What they were saying was get it done generally. And I think the fact that things in government take a long time to sort out, the fact that they were keen that the new ambassador, whoever it was there by inauguration, is not completely unreasonable. You know, I used to work for George Osborne in this job when he was my chair. He was the other candidate. Whether it had been George or Peter, I would have argued that they should be there in time.
No, Henry, I get that. But is it due process if you're putting pressure? Let me tell you something else where I absolutely believe that what's he called? Keir Starmer lied. He said in the House of Commons, Number 10 didn't know that Mandelson had failed the vetting. That's what he said, right? Now, you can pick apart the structure of Number 10, but David Maddox, the political editor of The Independent, has just shown us, it's been on the screen, that he sent an email on the 11th of September 2025 to the then head of communications, Tim Allen, saying, I've heard it from two sources. And the bloke went, no, they did know. That's what I'm saying. We can argue, and you and I are the same. We want to talk about potholes and cost of living and people can't pay their bills. And this government hasn't done that. That's an absolute fact. The last lot didn't. But the whole country, with everything that's going on, is stuck because this bloody man thinks it's okay to whip his MPs in to prevent him from... And my question to you is the same now as it was at the beginning. If he hasn't lied, refer yourself, deal with this and get on with running this country.
I think all of that, in terms of what David had to say before, and I have the utmost respect for David, is absolutely true. But isn't it a bit of a shocker that a journalist in the lobby was telling Number 10 that there might have been an issue with the vetting before anyone at the Foreign Office bothered to tell the Prime Minister?
But then I would suggest, yeah, OK, I can criticise the Foreign Office, the Home Office, absolutely. But what I can't get my head round, and you would know this, and I probably, for some people, I put it in wrong terms. We know he was called the Prince of Darkness. We know he had to resign in disgrace twice. We know everything about Mandelson. We didn't apparently know the depth of his disgusting relationship with the vile paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. But, Henry, many people from the centre to the right look at this and go, how has anyone with one brain cell decided that this was a good idea? They don't read... Keir Starmer and all his acolytes, do they not read the room? This was political suicide waiting to happen, and nobody can understand, unless he's got stuff on all of them, why the hell this happened in the first place.
I mean, I know Morgan pretty well from times of old. I mean, he's been around in the Labour Party for a long time. I thought his evidence yesterday was quite interesting. And it doesn't surprise me that Peter might have suggested himself for this job. That's a very Peter Mandelson type thing to do. And that explanation of events actually sounds pretty credible. Now, I don't think it reflects well on Keir or on Morgan, because they both should have realised this was a political disaster waiting to happen. But lots of talking heads, right, were on the radio on programmes like this saying how inspired it was. I think in retrospect, someone with similar political skills like George Osborne, although he obviously isn't a Labour figure, probably would have been a better choice, because he was also in many ways high risk. He was high risk politically. I'm sure lots of people in the Labour Party would have gone bananas about the idea of sending George to Washington. I'd probably be the only person who would have defended it at the time. But actually, that was probably the right decision. But to get that trade deal, the view was that they needed to have a political appointee who would be able to operate at a level beyond a normal civil servant.
Minister, maybe I'm wrong. Do you not think he's got dirt on them all, which is why he seems to wheedle his way back in the whole time?
I mean, I, like many people, have had kind of occasional conversations with Peter Mandelson over the years. He's not a personal friend or anything of mine. My view is that Peter is undoubtedly a very talented political figure. And in the battle to take the Labour Party back from the Corbynites, he was a significant player, and that's how he ended up the position of influence that he was. I think in the end, though, the Prime Minister's political judgment is what's at issue here. Did the Prime Minister make a political misjudgment in appointing Peter Mandelson? Yes, he's admitted that and he has apologised, to be fair, for that. Is he a liar? I don't think the evidence stacks up for that. And I think the whole point of this is, as you allude to, we're a week from the local elections, and me and anyone else who has any vague understanding of the Labour Party is having to try and intercede and try and explain what on earth might be going on.
And listen, fair
Not
play
talking
to you.
about the investment that's coming into other parts of the country, which is what would probably turn around the locals. Because the big issue for Keir Starmer is not whether he survives this crisis. I think he will. The issue is whether he can survive the crisis after next Thursday's local elections.
Couldn't agree more.
It's a bigger issue for him.
Let's talk very quickly. Haven't got much time. We've talked about, his judgment, and you're entirely right. That's what it's about. It's also about those MPs that blindly followed him. Very quick answers to very quick questions. In your mind, is it a mistake to bring back Angela Rayner?
Until the HMRC give her a clean bit of health, yes.
Is Labour doing a good job?
I mean, I'm no longer a frontline Labour figure as I was in my kind of misspent youth, but I would argue that on lots of practical issues, particularly the Chancellor, for all her bad press, and lots of body blows she's taken, actually has got the calls right. Before the crisis in Iran, the economy was turning around. That is the reality.
When she took... Sorry, I wish I had more time. But Henry, come on. The Tories, I stopped listening to the Tories 5 years ago, but when they left power, we were the second most successful economy in the G7. We're now in an absolutely horrendous position. We're spending, £120 million a year on paying interests on debts. It is typical Labour, right? If you arrive with a £22 million black hole or whatever it is, and you give your union mates 30% on day one, right, you're in trouble. Do you believe that Keir Starmer's done a good job as Prime Minister, Henry Murison?
On policy, but on communicating it to the public, I would say probably no. So good job on policy, bad job on how you communicate.
Do you think he survives?
I think it depends on what the alternatives are, and I think the challenge you've got is that the psychodrama of the last government made a lot of people very reluctant to change Prime Minister. And the challenge you've got, it's always the problem with this issue. Whoever the people you might prefer, it's not fancy football. None of them have got a mandate to run the country. Keir Starmer does.
Do you believe...
The obvious answer is he's got to turn it around. That's the best outcome for Labour Party.
You called the
if he can sort this out.
I get your point, and I love talking to you. You talk about the psychodrama of the Tories, I'll absolutely agree. Are you telling me the last 2 years hasn't been as bad, if not worse, in terms of psychodrama?
I think that you could argue that has this government managed to communicate a clear message? Probably no. I think until the most recent periods of leadership speculation, I think we were, as Keir promised, seeing a little bit more of politics touching more lightly on people's lives, whatever the phrase was he used when he became Prime Minister. And that is what people want. People want a government that is basically focused on the cost of living and sorting out whatever nonsense is coming from America. That is fundamentally what we need the country to be run by. And at the moment, lots of other Labour figures arguing they should be Prime Minister is actually probably making it worse, not better.
I'll say this, I'll say it about Carl. You're good to come on. We might disagree, but that's what debate is about. Thank you, Henry Murison, former Labour advisor. Almost 8 o'clock, we're live across the United Kingdom. Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, the author supreme, is next after the news, which is now.
position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson. He was a member of the House of Lords, he was a Privy Councillor. The risks that attending his appointment were well known and had been made clear to the Prime Minister before appointment. Now, in the end, the FCDO insisted and put its foot down. I understand my predecessor had to be very firm in person. But that was a live debate at the point of announcement, and I think it's important to make that clear.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back or welcome along. If it's welcome along, where the hell have you been? We've been here since 6 o'clock. This is Talk Breakfast, the home of common sense, and of course, the home of the alarm clock. Break your views on the news of the day. Always welcome. We're here from 6 a.m. Monday to Thursday. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. It's all about on Wednesday the 29th. Is that the date? Yeah. It's not the 28th. It's the 20th. It says Wednesday the 28th here. It's the 29th. See? Honestly. What are you waking up to? You're waking up to just complete outrage from many, many, many people, including Labour voters. Last night, the MPs in the House of Commons voted on whether Keir Starmer should face the Privileges Committee on this alleged cover-up over Mandelson, what he knew, what he didn't know. He's been thrown to the wolves by the Foreign Office. Yesterday, his little acolyte, McSweeney, in his cheap suit, he sort of said, no, it was all me. Labour MPs were told, you vote with the Prime Minister or you're out. We'll make sure you're deselected. We'll bring up dirt on you. It's called a whip, a three-line whip. Many people this morning saying, I thought we lived in a democracy. If this man was innocent, why didn't he refer himself to the Privileges Committee? Because he's innocent, in his words. And every single newspaper, front of the Times at the top, Labour MPs whipped to clear Starmer, feel complicit in the cover-up. Front of the Mail today, Labour revolt over Starmer's sleaze cover-up. This is not going away. Alongside that piece of news, apparently, it's very interesting, apparently we hear rumours that there could be a reshuffle. Back in September, there was a reshuffle. Well, he decided to have a new phase 2. Have we got that clip? This is brilliant because this was last September after the first 12 months hadn't gone well. This was phase 2. Have a watch.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction about what we're doing. It needs a more powerful number 10, so we've added to the team with some really important new members. I made a number of other changes, but this is about focus on delivery now, marching forward to the next phase of government.
So that was September at phase 2. The big announcement and the really important new member was Peter Mandelson. And that didn't go very well at all. Now, the Tories, and this is very important, put out something yesterday that I think is utterly brilliant. Because if you remember, when Bojo, who I supported and then was very angry with, was quite rightly brought to task by the then opposition, they implored him to go in front of the Privileges Committee and demanded that he resigned. This is what they put out yesterday.
Prime Minister resorting to lies. The Prime Minister lied. He lied to this country. If he misled Parliament, he must resign. It's no good him trying to blame politicians in general. There's one person at the centre of this. Look, there are only two possible explanations. Either he's trashing the Ministerial Code, or he's claiming he was repeatedly lied to by his own advisers. Come off it. The public have made up their mind. I think the facts speak for themselves. He then lied about what had happened. The Prime Minister lied. I genuinely think now that it's in the national interest that he goes. The Ministerial Code says that ministers who knowingly mislead the House should resign. Why is he still here?
Sean, good morning.
Morning, Jeremy. Sean from Grimsby. As we know, politics now isn't about telling the truth, it's about optics and how things look. And the first thing I think of is, why would you not want an inquiry if you've got nothing to hide? But just remember, these are the same MPs who voted to stop an inquiry, also voted to prosecute soldiers. These current batch of MPs have the backbone of a jellyfish and the moral compass of Peter Mandelson himself. Anyway, Jeremy, great show, mate.
Let's say a very good morning to a man who knows all about protocol and I think does not have the backbone of a jellyfish or the morality of Peter Mandelson. Nigel Evans, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I don't think, and I'm getting to the point, Nigel, where I keep saying this, I don't think I've heard such anger this morning. The other day about the Troubles Bill, we'll talk about that. Just as a man who, as former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, you would know about how the processes within the chamber after 30 years as the Tory MP for the Ribble Valley work. Just in basic layman's terms to me, if I'm innocent, why am I going to get my whips to force my troops to back me? Because that's not going to answer the problem. That's going to make an even bigger story of something that I'm trying to move on from, isn't it?
It's an obvious question. And it's no surprise to me that so many Labour MPs were angry that they were whipped into the lobbies yesterday in order to protect Keir Starmer from facing the Privileges Committee. A number of them actually stood up and suggested that he referred himself to the Privileges Committee. If you've got nothing to hide, why don't you put yourself forward to them? 15 Labour MPs on a very strong three-line whip voted against Keir Starmer's three-line whip, and 53 other Labour MPs abstained.
And can I jump in for a reason, Nudge? Because your ex-colleague, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, was on an hour ago and he made a very interesting point at what you've just said. Yes, 15 voted against, including Emma Lewell there, who made a great speech. 53 abstained. And the word from the Labour benches was these people were not in the Commons. But an hour and a half later, there was another vote, I think about social media, and the Labour Party's figures went up by 70, which meant those 53 were around the House of Commons. So that abstention, in my humble opinion, is part of, yes, you're right, a massive rebellion against this man who can only be accused of lying. I mean, there's no other answer.
Well, the Labour Party have been caught out. If that was the excuse, if the Labour Party is saying that the abstention 53 just simply weren't on the premises, and yet all of a sudden, in a vote not long afterwards, they magically appear, then clearly they have been absolutely exposed. I think it's a huge rebellion because, of course, there could be punishments now that will face at least 15, if not the other 53 as well. I think that may be too far for them, but the 15 could quite clearly face repercussions from the Labour chief whip. Listen, the important thing in all of this is that the people in the country can see this for what it is.
Yep.
And just because Starmer has managed to use his strength and bully his MPs into protecting him from the Privileges Committee, nothing will be able now to stop the May the 7th local elections, which will be seen as a referendum on Keir Starmer. We already know they're being hammered in the opinion polls. We already know that Starmer tried to stop some of these local elections from taking place, and it was only a judicial review and the legal advice that he got that he then decided
brought by I have to be balanced Reform, who have allowed 4.7 million people to have the vote in a week's time by bringing that judicial review.
Yeah, so the fact that he's been able to block this Privileges Committee looking into whether he lied or not will not prevent the people of Britain acting as their own Privileges Committee on May the 7th. And we already know from the opinion polls they're being hammered in Scotland, hammered in Wales. Even in Wales, they're being predicted to either go third or in fourth place when they have ruled Wales ever since devolution came about. And they're going to be hammered in England as well. So he can run, he can hide, but on May the 7th, he will face the wrath of the British public, who will judge him not only on his actions yesterday in Parliament in forcing his Labour MPs to protect him, but also on the number of other things that he has done, which has been counter to what he said he would do in the general election of 2024. The electorate are angry. I spoke to one Labour MP 2 weeks ago, and she said to me, you know, people detest us, Nigel. They detest us. And they're angry about us. And they will get that opportunity on May the 7th. Yesterday's antics will not have made people's feelings towards the Labour Party any better, I can assure you.
I so agree with you. I love the bones of you, man. Listen, this is what I don't get. And because you've done it, you did it for 30 years. Just explain something to me that I have asked every single person this morning and I still haven't had an answer. Almost everything he said he was going to do, he's done the opposite. Almost every promise he made to farmers, to pensioners, to waspy women, the list is endless, he's gone against. Now we look at a Prime Minister who seems hell-bent only on protecting his own, job. Certainly there's no legacy. Out there in the country, whatever your political position, people are worried about bills, cost of living, potholes, lack of police, shoplifting, the illegal migrant situation. Does this man, and I don't want to make it personal, I want to get an opinion from somebody who I respect, does this man have no concern at all about the electorate? Is he so far up his own backside with his large majority that he thinks he can ride roughshod over what everybody I ever speak to believes in? Everybody, everywhere. Petrol station yesterday, bloke, you've heard him, came straight up to me and went, what the hell's going on? Why am I working all my life? Is it that? Is it sheer I'm too important? Or is he, and I can't think of a better phrase, don't worry, Kristen, just politically thick, politically incapable, doesn't have it in him, doesn't have the DNA to sniff anything out, man? Because you would look at Mandelson, Nigel, and you'd go, you are taking the mickey, aren't you? Has nobody sort of sussed it? I just don't get the decisions, man.
No, he's politically arrogant, and he got an easy ride coming into power in 2024 because Rishi Sunak gave up in the end, called an early election. Had he only carried on for another 6 months and been stronger, then I suspect the Labour Party would have still won, but not with as big a majority. I mean, people have got to remember as well that in 2024, just simply because he's got a huge majority, he did not get a huge vote. It was just over 33%.
He got less than Jeremy Corbyn got.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And if you include those who didn't vote, he actually only got 1 in 5. So he's already on a very weak base. And then when he started basically overturning every promise that he'd made during the election, including the winter fuel payments, his promise to the WASPy women, the farmers who he turned on, I mean, the hospitality trade, national insurance, employers going up. I mean, all of these things, plus others, you know, the Lord Allygate when he was given clothes and glasses. I mean, the list is almost endless. And you know, so basically what he wants to do is retain the position of Prime Minister. He rather likes the position, but he's not fit for the office. And that is the problem with Keir Starmer. And his solution to the problem, we find from reading in the papers today, is to bring back Angela Rayner, somebody who's under investigation from HMRC for avoiding paying stamp duty. That's the allegation on the second home that she had. And that is his solution. He thinks he can do a deal with her. I mean, the only reason that Starmer has not already been turned on is because there's nobody there who can come forward who's able to take
But
him
you're
on.
a little bit late with your news. Yes, the papers are reporting that Angela Rayner could be given a seat back to apparently head off a leadership thing. But have you heard that there is a possibility he's next going to bring back the anti-corruption minister, Shulit Sadiq, who was actually fired for corruption in Bangladesh? I mean, what next? We're going to bring back the transport minister.
Yeah, bring back Louise Haig.
Honestly, he said the phone had been nicked, and that was a lie. The thing is, right, it was brought home to me massively, Nige, in the last 24 hours. You know, our king, you and I are royalists, right? 77, not in the best of health, has gone to America and with soft diplomacy has done the most extraordinary job and has shown in 48 hours what it is to be a statesman. Whether you agree or disagree with the royal family, I agree. I think unbelievable. He's got Donald Trump eating out of the palm of his hand. It shouldn't be down to the king. Internationally, we're a laughing stock, whether it's not allowing our bases to be used, whatever it is. And you look at this man and you go, so internationally you've made us a laughing stock. You keep going on about working families. Go north of Watford Gap here and ask working people, because they don't relate to the Labour Party anymore, whether it's the Greens, whether it's Reform, whoever it is, they don't relate to Labour. And you're so right. The British people see him for who he is. They are absolutely on the money, and they are saying you're not up to it, or you're a fraud, or you're a liar, or this is a cover-up. There's no legacy. This is just a matter of when, not if, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if you recall the relationship with the United States of America, it hit the buffers when Starmer refused to allow bases to be used by the United States of America, and then 2 days later decided to allow them to be used. And then, of course, it took us over a week to get a ship to Cyprus when the French and the Greeks were already there.
It's still not there. HMS Dragon, you feet. Is it got there?
That's right, and then it got taken in for servicing. I mean, we became an international laughingstock. And what's happened since the King has gone to the United States of America? The King Charles is on the front page of newspapers throughout the entire world. His speeches, both yesterday and the day before, were absolutely incredible. He has shown the power of soft diplomacy against basically a prime minister who has humiliated the United Kingdom. Thank goodness for King Charles. And do you know what strikes me as well, Jeremy, if you remember, there were some within the Labour Party who tried to stop the royal visit from going ahead. They didn't want Charles to go to America. Emily Thornberry being one of them, who said, oh, no. America needs to pay a price for Donald Trump's remarks. And yet, thank goodness he went, because the special relationship that we know is so important to the United Kingdom in so many ways has now been re-solidified thanks to this visit that's there. And we're only halfway through. We're halfway through. And Charles's speech, the humour in it was absolutely incredible. And the warmth from Donald Trump to the King and the Queen has been palpable. You can see it. It's there. and we should really be using this as much as we possibly can. If ever Donald Trump comes to Britain, we need to hide Keir Starmer if he's still the Prime Minister, and make sure that he only meets King Charles and the Queen.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not all for everything Donald Trump says, but there's a way of dealing with people like that, and I tell this every day, and the team go, oh. I remember seeing him about 2 weeks after he got elected, meeting Trump, and they walked outside, and Trump had one of those big files that he'd signed something, and he dropped the papers. Have you seen this? And Starmer was on his knees picking up the paper like a naughty boy, you big idiot. Listen, love having you on. How's the book going?
Well, it's August is when I'm going to restart it. I'm going to do 3 weeks solid to finish it. So I'm looking forward to the summer somewhere, wherever.
Am I in it yet?
You will be. Don't worry, Jeremy. Don't worry. I mean, do you want a £5,000 mention or a £10,000 mention?
I just don't want the truth about what we used to get up to. I'm joking. Thank you very much indeed. The legend that is Nigel Evans. 8:20. We're live across the United Kingdom. It's that time. We'll go to Kevin Hodenrath, the chairman of the Conservative Party, in a minute, but I'm afraid there's more important things. Oliver will not get out the car to go to school, and I say good morning, Ollie Bob. So I hope you're all right, mate. And Rissy-Roo. Behave yourselves. Have a great day. Love you loads. Morning, Richard.
I just want to pick up on something one of your last guests said, the former Labour advisor. He was talking about how it was a light touch government. Light touch? They're banning fish from schools. They wanted to play around with your pensions. They're trying to control what you say. How is it a light touch government when they censor what's on the internet? I'm sorry, absolutely outrageous comment. There's no way that this government wants to be light touch. They want to control what you do, control what you see, and control what you think.
8:20, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Let's go to the chairman of the Conservative Party. Is he outdoors? I suspect he is. It's a bright sunny morning in London town. Kevin Hodenrath, a very good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Jeremy. Very well, thank you. Beautiful day here.
How can you be the chairman of the party that... Oh, there they are, the idiots behind. How can you bring such a political stunt as you did last night? Shame on you, Kevin. What a... Honestly, mate, last night, I mean, just the view from almost every part of the media and every single commentator is... If you're telling the truth, mate, refer yourself to the Privileges Committee, get this done, and don't force your MPs to back you, who now look like they're all complicit in this cover-up.
Yes, exactly. And a political stunt, that's interesting, because why, if it was a political stunt, why did 15 Labour members of Parliament and more who couldn't attend last night for various other reasons vote with us? And because they see what you see, and that is the truth in Parliament is very important, and holding the Prime Minister to a high standard, and the standard, of course, he held other people to, is very important. And you know, he talks about there's really some really important things going on right now. Of course there are, the cost of living, but we could help with some of the solutions on that if he worked with us, of course. But the reality is that he sacked one of the top officials in this country, Ollie Robbins, at the start of this process, and these people are really important in terms of the proper governance and the proper running of this country. So we think it is very important that we do get to the truth of this. We still have not got to the bottom of this. All the documentation around the appointments of Peter Mandelson has not been revealed yet, and we want to make sure it is, because according to the public, to polls, the 60% of the public want to see the truth coming out and want to see the Prime Minister face a proper investigation about his conduct in this matter.
I just want to add something to you that you might not know about. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, your ex-leader, was on the show earlier, and that figure you gave me, 15 actually voted against the government last night. It'd be interesting to see whether there are sanctions from the Whip's office against them. 53 abstained, but Kevin, you should use this today on your other rounds. You know, those 53 weren't available. An hour and a half later, you had another vote, and they all voted because the thing went up by 75 votes, which says that 53 of them either stayed in their offices or stayed in the bar, which in itself is a two fingers to the government. But I want to ask you what I've asked everybody. We've seen Ollie Robbins, we've seen Philip Barton, we've seen Morgan McSweeney take the rap. That didn't, in my opinion, that didn't convince me at all. I had David Maddox on, political editor of The Independent, who sent a text to the then Director of Communications, Tim Allen, in September last year saying he's failed the vetting process. The response was, it's ongoing. They did know. Dan Hodges in the Mail told me on Monday he has lied to the House 7 times minimum, right? How in the name of God does this man expect the British people to allow him to continue when the only way he's surviving is by frog-marching his MPs and making them vote against what, unbelievably for many people, is a lie? I think most people know that by now, Kev.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. Can I just add to your numbers, actually? It's an interesting statistic you quote, but also the other 2 people didn't turn up are Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick. They didn't vote with us last night either. They were missing. And the point about that is politics isn't punditry. It's not just about standing on the sidelines and criticising. It's doing the hard work, as Kemi Badenoch is doing, to hold this government to account. Because he has lied, or at least he's been recklessly negligent in all these matters. I personally think he has lied time and time again. But the most important thing, he's a very poor Prime Minister. And what we want to do is hold him to account by any means possible to actually establish the fact that he has lied and therefore he'd have to resign. I think he will resign sooner or later. We've got the May the 7th elections, the local elections coming up then. I think the May the 7th elections, that will be a vote by the public on Keir Starmer. Yeah. And I think when that happens, when they get the devastating results around that, at that point in time, he'll decide his time is up and we can change Prime Ministers and hopefully get somebody running this country who is actually fit for purpose, because the country is not doing well under Keir Starmer. Business confidence is dropping, consumer confidence is dropping, inflation is rising, cost of living is going up. We have solutions to those things. We've got our cheap power plan that we have put to the government. We'll work with them on, that would reduce the cost of energy to households and businesses by 20%. Start drilling again in the North Sea, which is the obvious thing to do right now, and to scrap the intended 5p rise in fuel duty that's due to start this autumn. All those things we're willing to work with the government on to keep the government honest. We can move the country forward, but not under this Prime Minister.
The alternatives to many of us are perhaps even more frightening than what's here. But in essence, we're talking, as you quite rightly say, Kev, about the integrity, about the ability to make a decision. And I, as I said to you at the beginning, I don't know whether the man is incompetent or just completely arrogant. Rumours this morning that Orange could be heading back, and also rumours, Kevin, of a reshuffle in about a week's time, because he wants to start phase 27. I think we had phase 2 last September, didn't we? You just get the feeling, certainly if you do this on a daily basis, that it's sort of like a duck, that the legs are going mad under the water and there seems to be very little direction. And as you said, the people in the country are worried about their bills, they're worried about potholes, they're worried about the fact that their shops get nicked, shoplifting is rife, there's no police. Those are the things that matter to people, not this. Because I had somebody on the Labour side this morning say, after 14 years of Tory psychodrama, and there was at the end, but the last 2 years, in my humble opinion, excuse the pun, has trumped even that.
Well, it's one crisis after the next. It's been a mess since he took over, and clearly there are some international events that are making life even more difficult. But the reality is, many of the problems we have today over the last 2 years have been created by this Prime Minister. More tax, which has destroyed business confidence, more red tape, all those kind of things. Foolish political decisions like scrapping the winter fuel allowance, then U-turn on it. I think the work we've done in Parliament has brought about 16 U-turns by this government. Now, I think Keir Starmer will go in the coming weeks. I think then who the Labour Party chooses to lead the party and lead the country is up to the Labour Party themselves. But one thing I would say, if it's going to be Angela Rayner, I think, God forbid, but if it's Angela Rayner, she must settle her tax affairs first. She was caught tax dodging and lying about it, so before that can happen, she's got to make sure everything she owes to the country in terms of paying a debt to HMRC is settled before that can happen. But it's a complete mess. And the most important factor in any organisation is leadership. The reality is, the Labour Party and this country has been led by the wrong person right now, and we'd like to see Keir Starmer go.
Mate, great to have you on. Thank you so much indeed. I really appreciate it. Kevin Hollinwright there, chairman of the Conservative Party. I want to read a text message that should resonate with that man that stood behind him and waved the flag. Whatever good the King, says Dave in South Gloucestershire, is managing to achieve in America, whatever bridges the brave King is managing to build, no doubt Starmer and his inept anti-Brexit bullies will undo everything good that he's done. Very interesting. Gary, Nigel, Jez, I have a question for you both. I have three daughters in... I have three daughters in their 20s, but they have no political interest. How do we get the generation to start voting? Well, maybe we need to improve the quality of our politicians. Maybe we need to get politicians who, when they say something, they do it, or when they promise something, it actually happens. Maybe we need politicians who don't just self-serve, but serve the very bloody people they're supposed to be elected to serve. Linda's in Stalybridge. Jez, can you imagine if this was Boris? Surely telling the King he appointed Mandelston before he got clearance. Surely that's lying to the King as well. One angry man, Peter, I will no longer vote for reform, seeing as how Farage and Jenrick didn't turn up for the vote against Starmer. That was just mentioned by Kevin Hollinrake as well. What was this? Oh, yeah. Sarah from Derby. I thought Starmer was going to be transparent and clean up politics. He's a snake and is self-serving. He does not deserve to work for me. I am embarrassed. 0344 499 1000. It's 8:30 on Wednesday morning. Live across the UK, we go to the West Midlands. Tony, you're on Talk Breakfast. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy.
How are you?
All right, mate.
Whereabouts are you, son? You in Dudley?
Just outside Dudley, Jeremy.
Outside Dudley, mate. Are you a West Brom fan, pal?
No, mate.
Who are you supporting, mate?
The Villa.
Up the... Oh, now, I need a chat. I need a chat. I'm a West Ham... No, listen, mate, don't start. Listen to me. I'm a West Ham fan, and you, at Villa, you've got Spurs on Saturday. In between the two Europa Cup games. If you rest all your good players, I'm coming to Villa Park and sorting you lot out. I need you to beat Spurs. Do you understand me?
Yes, I want that. I want to see Spurs go down.
Good boy, mate. That's lovely. Right, what you got for me, kiddo?
About this Angela Rayner.
What?
Angela Rayner, the tax fiddler.
Orange, yeah.
Yeah, what you got to think about, what people haven't said, Lester Piggott, the jockey to the Queen, was had for tax, stripped of his titles and put in prison. And I'm not about putting her back into the government. And another thing,
yes,
they're on about stopping these boats. You could stop that in one day. Stop the French fishing in our waters, and they'd stop the immigrants coming over.
Well, I don't disagree with anything you've said, to be honest, but I feel like in a morning of quite, serious debate, I feel like my mate, Tony in the West Midlands, is the perfect candidate. We've talked Rayner, we've talked the King. Can we talk about birds?
Birds?
There's a story in the paper this morning, Archie. Listen to this. Birds in cities fear men. No. Birds in cities fear women more than men, according to research. On average, men were able to get 7.5 metres near an urban bird before they took flight, which is a metre closer than a woman, because a woman, apparently, according to research, within 8.5 metres, the bird does one. To establish which was more menacing, women or men, were recorded walking straight towards pigeons, starlings and other bird life in urban parks. And the birds consistently gravitated towards men than women. Any comment on that, Tony in Dudley?
Well, I say that about birds, Jeremy. I feed the birds in my garden.
You what?
I feed my birds in the garden.
You feed your birds... Do you have one of... Honest to God, do you feed them nuts in one of them things that hangs from your tree?
No, I've made a special cage for them to get in and eat the stuff.
Do they... This is very interesting to me. If you in the West Midlands put the food in, if the wife puts it in, do they go, oh, I'm not having that, and fly off? Do they like you more than the wife?
Yes.
I think there's a message in that, don't you?
Yes.
How long have you been married for?
51 years, and I was a working Brit for 45 years.
Good man. How'd you last... I asked my dad once how he survived 60 years married to my mother, and he said, I stopped listening after 6 months. Any marital advice from you?
Don't get married.
Brilliant. OK, we'll pass that to Dean, who works in the office. He's going through a hard time, bless his heart. Good on you, Tone. We love it. It's 51 years, don't get married. Up the Villa. Beat the Spurs. We love you, man. 0344 499 1000. Morning, Carl.
Hi, Jeremy. Carl from Coventry here. Well, what can I say? Morgan McSweeney. Yeah, I had a total different vision of him. When you hear about him, I was expecting to see someone say, like David Hay, to be questioned, you know, standing there. All we got was Alan Carr. I mean, really disappointing. Really disappointing. Just going to wait now and see what brilliant role they give him next. Thanks, Jeremy.
A position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson. He was a member of the House of Lords, he was a Privy Councillor. The risks that attending his appointment were well known and had been made clear to the Prime Minister before appointment. Now, in the end, the FCDO insisted and put its foot down. I understand my predecessor had to be very firm in person. But that was a live debate at the point of announcement, and I think it's important to make that clear.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, my friends. Just gone 25 to 9. Julie here from 10 o'clock this morning. And don't forget, Prime Minister's Question Time, live and exclusive on Talk, will be a hell of a moment today. Starmer. Will he turn up? Will he answer a question? Will he hold a three-line vote on whether he should actually turn up or not? Thank you. Well, it's a lovely... That's very kind of you. Thank you so much indeed. So listen, if you want to be on 0344 499 1000... Jim in Chorley FM, you remember that? Why has Angela not yet settled the tax bill? Bill? I've no idea. I just want to read your text from Nadia. I think this is absolutely fantastic. We had Ian Duncan Smith on earlier. He's written a great piece in The Sun today, page 10, about how, unfortunately, we now live in a world where our benefits bill outstrips what the Exchequer gets in terms of tax from people that work, and how, you know, we need to have this debate. There are genuine people, quite rightly, who are helped by the rest of us paying tax so that they can get on with their lives, who can't find work. But we have to admit, as a nation, there are a feckless number of people now taking advantage. And it's got to the point, as he says today, where for most people, working turns out to be the wrong option because you'd be better off on the dole. It was never meant to be that. Nadji says going to work every day can be tough. Here's my scenario. Wake up the kids, get them washed, dressed and fed, then yourself. Get one to school, the other to nursery. A long commute, stuck in traffic, graft all day at work in a job you hate. Time to go home. Horrid commute back, pick up the kids, get home, get food ready, talk to the kids, help with their homework, get them ready for bed, clean up, bed and starts the next day. And all the damn while, she says, my neighbours have their curtains shut, having a line, and probably can do whatever they want, sitting on the dole because they're getting more money than me. They get free rent, free council tax, plenty food and holidays. This is so wrong. Why do I bother? That is such an impressive text message, because that is the reality of working alarm clock Brits who are saying, I'm doing everything right. I say it every day. I'm going to work, I'm paying my tax, I'm doing this, I'm living within the confines of the law. And we are faced with a generation of people who don't have to make the same sacrifices. Add into that the news today that a massive 2.2 million extra migrants will arrive in the UK in the next 8 years. That means the UK's population will peak more than 40 years earlier than previously thought, hitting a high of 72.5 million by 2054. ONS data also reveals that deaths will outnumber births for the first time this year. Look at that migrant tracker. It's on screen if you're listening on the radio. 71,125 migrants have arrived illegally since Starmer became Prime Minister. The problem doesn't seem to be getting any better, and our social services are creaking, so that if you do right, go to work, pay your tax, you're worse off than people that sit at home. How can that be right? We're delighted to have on the director of Oxford Migration Observatory, a member of the Migration Advisory Committee. You try saying that. Madeleine Sumption, a very good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It is true what Ian Duncan Smith says, isn't it? We've got to a point where people don't work and people come into this country, I'm afraid, illegally, knowing that they're going to have their backsides wiped and actually get more than people who go to work every single day. How fundamentally wrong, Madeleine, is that?
It's interesting. There's been a lot of research about how migration affects the labour market. Is it, for example, unemployment rates? If unemployment is really low in the UK and there are lots of jobs, do more migrants come? Is it, if migrants come to the UK, does that mean fewer people in the UK get jobs? And one of the really interesting things is that the impact, economists really struggle to find big impacts on the labour market. And it looks like actually a lot of the driver for people coming to the UK is not so much about the labour market, but the fact that overall living standards are very high in the UK. You have people a lot of the people coming are applying for asylum. So they're coming from parts of the world that are sometimes war-torn, sometimes just chaotic.
France, I can't
exactly.
have that.
So this is the interesting thing, right? That actually a lot of the people coming have so some people obviously do apply for asylum in France, and then you have people who've been refused asylum in France or in another EU country, and then they would then not have status there. They would be in theory returnable, although other EU countries struggle to return migrants in the same way that the UK does. And then people, but if they are able to come to the UK, then they could get a new asylum decision. So I
think what's interesting, now I take what you're saying about the labour market, although I think when Blair opened the doors, it was, come and be a fruit picker, come and be a hospital porter. You'd probably disagree with my analogy. I'd say to the feckless who are not genuine welfare benefits claimants who are taking advantage of the system, you need to give something back to your community. I've always thought that. But the truth of the matter is the pull that what they're given to come to this country is an absolute reason that so many people, I mean, you said some come from war-torn countries, I'm sure some do, but hundreds, thousands come because they know we're a soft touch. And when you get to a point where that is impacting, I mean, here's a question for you. Can Britain cope with an extra 2.2 million migrants? Won't this break, which is already a broken country?
So I guess it depends what you're thinking about when you talk about can it cope. So people often talk about the impacts on public services like the NHS, for example. And there actually, I think a lot of the impact, if you have really fast population growth, then it can be, you've got to build more hospitals, more roads, more infrastructure, right? All of that stuff needs to be built, and then someone's got to pay for it. And so actually a lot of the question in terms of how the UK manages migration comes down to actually what the people who are migrating to the UK, how much tax do they pay? And is that enough to cover the costs of the public services they're going to use, and then more infrastructure that the UK needs to build? So actually, when you're thinking about the impacts, often what's most important is not just the number. The number is it's not irrelevant, but it matters. But it's who is migrating rather than how many. And generally what we see is that people coming into highly skilled, highly paid jobs tend to pay quite a lot of tax, and that more than enough covers the costs. Whereas if
but they wouldn't come in illegally, would they? They come in to do a job. I would suspect, unless I'm wrong, and you'd be able to tell me, the majority of illegal migrants who seemingly allowed to arrive in this country and treated better than the population that's paying taxes and paying their stamp don't ever damn well work because they know what's given to them. And now we have a government that says, I don't need you to get political, but don't mean to ask you this, but you can have £40,000 to take your family and go back. The message to alarm clock Brits, the message to hard-working people is everybody else seems to benefit, certainly people coming to this country, and in Ian Duncan Smith's case, many who are claiming benefits who shouldn't, to the detriment of hard-working Brits. That's just not a good look in any which way you look at it, is it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of the people coming to the country hope that they will be able to work.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
Don't agree with you.
So it depends a lot on which countries people are coming from.
But how do you answer then? How, in a mature way, do you answer the fact that all we see, we've got a chief secretary of the Prime Minister who says these boats are full of women and children. We know that to be completely and utterly inaccurate. These are young men, unvetted, arriving in this country, throwing their passports or whatever paperwork they have 12 miles offshore, knowing that they'll be given accommodation, probably a mobile phone, a check by a GP, probably they'll see a dentist with no... I'm not saying not all of them work, but a majority do not work, and that is having an impact not only financially on this country, but also it sends a particularly wrong message, I think, to those of us who are trying to live their lives correctly, because we feel, there's this word Madeline always used, it feels unfair, doesn't it?
Right. So I think where you're right is that employment rates for people who are granted refugee status, we don't have great data across the board, but we do have data on people who, they claim asylum, and then the government recognises them as a refugee and says they can't be returned to the country of origin. Employment rates for that group are very low. And a lot of that, it's slightly higher for men, that we see a big gap between men and women. So some of it is that the female employment rates are very low from countries like Afghanistan, for example, where it's less common for women to work. We also see sometimes the levels of education that people have would be relatively low, and that means that even if they want to work, when they come to the UK, the skills that they have are not necessarily what UK employers are looking for, and so it can be difficult for people who actually would like to work.
Do you not think that people come here to take advantage with absolutely no desire to work at all? Do you not think that we are now, through whatever our beliefs in the past, we are a sitting duck because we offer too many people too much that we're not offering the population that's here grafting?
I guess so. Thinking about, what I can only tell you what the research has found, and it doesn't. We know that there are various drivers of migration, right? So there are the general perception of the UK as being a sort of welcoming country where people can live. The perception that the UK has good quality public services.
But we don't. We don't.
Well, the UK has a very good reputation, and often people don't necessarily, people who are coming here don't always have, the sort of finest detail. They don't necessarily always understand precisely what the policies are. A lot of it is the sort of, word of mouth, the general impression that people have about the UK, which does have a good, reputation as being a good place to live, and so that has an impact. I haven't seen actually research on sort of precise, how many people expect to be able to work, on how many people wouldn't plan to work at all. It's very difficult sometimes.
Can I ask you, and I understand your research base, but do you not think that this country is a soft touch?
Right. So I guess, how do we think about what is a soft touch? I suppose one way of thinking about that is comparing it to other countries. So is the UK...
Well, you get a tent in France, but here you get a 4-star hotel. You can see a doctor, but if you've worked all your life, there's a 7-month waiting list. You can see a dentist the next day, but if you've worked here all your life, it'll take you 6 months. That is a soft touch, and that is giving to people who... The unfairness angles back. I mean, I think if you try and live your life correctly, you'd feel that other people are being benefited. And whilst I listen to the argument, these people are coming from war-torn countries, it doesn't stack up at all. That doesn't stack up. Because here's the thing, the reason why that doesn't stack up, Madeleine. If you leave a war-torn country, this is just me talking, I could be wrong. I take my wife and kids with me. I wouldn't leave them in a war-torn country. And also, when I left that country, the first country that I came to that didn't have bombs raining down on my head, I would stop there because I would feel safe. But none of them do that. They don't stop there. They come to Britain. They come to Britain because Britain, in the past, has always been a sort of moral leader, however you want to describe it. But I think we're sort of past that now. I think we've got to a point where, I don't know whether it's generosity or blindness, however you want to put it, morality, we've got to a point now where it's being taken advantage of, and that is also to the detriment of the population living here. And I think that's why there is such a continued debate about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, on the point about war-torn countries, I think both points are correct, right? That originally people come from war-torn countries, then they go to the neighbouring country, and most people do stop there. Some people then continue on, and once they have left, once they've moved, from Eritrea and they've moved up, possibly they're in Turkey or Lebanon or what have you, then after that, the decision about whether to move on to Europe or further on to the UK is more of an economic decision. That obviously that's not about safety, because people, you're absolutely right, people are safe in France.
But it shouldn't be an economic decision when the economics of a country are struggling because of that not being dealt with, and I keep saying it, to then the detriment of your own population. Madeleine, fascinating. Love having you on. Thank you so much indeed. I have to move on. But Director of Oxford Migration Observatory, Madeleine Sumption, thank you very much indeed. 10 to 9. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. What is it, 10 to 9? We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Talk Breakfast. So much to come. In the next hour from 9 o'clock, Dan Hodges, who has systematically and forensically been taking Starmer apart for months. We'll talk to him in great detail about what the latest means. Right now, we're going to say a very good morning to Talk Breakfast reporter Samara Gill. Good morning, Samara. How are you?
Great to be with you, Jeremy. And so much news overnight. My goodness.
Somebody texted me earlier and said, I went to bed in England and woke up in North Korea. Our Prime Minister, to save his own back, has to frog march his own MPs through a lobby, despite the fact that they are now all complicit in what many people believe is a cover-up. But I want to talk to you because you've sort of become an authority on the royal family, haven't you? I mean, you really are. I mean, most of your work is about the royal family now. Have you been following this trip? Because I said this earlier, and I think it's really relevant. With everything that's going on domestically, to see a 77-year-old man with cancer, right, go and do what this man, King Charles, has done, having Donald Trump eating out of the palm of his hand, whilst also, emphasising the bond between America and the UK as irreplaceable and unbreakable. He's done a fantastic job, hasn't he, in the last couple of days?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's old Charlie turning the charm offensive on, isn't it? I mean, as I said, some of your audience will hate me calling him that, but I am Australian. So there's that. But, you know, you're totally right. He represents what Britain was, what the international audience thinks that Britain is. And I'm so grateful that he is restoring our public image to the rest of the world after Keir Starmer took an axe to it, or has taken an axe to it for the past couple of years. So I really think it is the best of Britain that he's showing, and his speech last night really encapsulated that. It was, you know, they say that the old tale of if you're very close with someone in Britain, they'll start making jokes at you, and I think that was the funniest thing, because he was able to take jibes at Trump but then pepper in some things that really congratulated him, and I think this is a great partnership. I'm really impressed by it.
I think his approach is right. I agree with you, because what he does, which Starmer doesn't do, is, I mean, in that speech last night, there were one or two very poignant moments about NATO, about his service in the Royal Navy, about alliances, quite serious points, and then he'd drop in something like this. Did you hear the French comment? This is utterly, utterly brilliant. Listen to this, Samara, play it.
Indeed, you recently commented, Mr. President, that if it were not for the United States, European countries would be speaking German. Dare I say that if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French.
You see, and because Trump's completely in awe and in love with anything that's royal, he's made a great point there. He's put him right in his place, hasn't he?
He really has, but with that soft touch diplomacy that we really rely on with the royal family. And I think that you can really hear his late mother come through with these sort of jibes that she would get away with. And I think it's really, really impressive. You know, he spoke about his mother's difficult trip to Washington in the 50s when they were at war with the Middle East. And he said, you know, it couldn't possibly be like anything like we have today. And I think it's really funny, because it's, you know, it's just sort of a nod to what's going on, but that very royal indirectness, which people have grown to love. So I think it's very impressive. I think the only thing we should think about is that maybe he usurped Trump a little bit. And is that going to ruffle Trump's feathers, or does Trump have that?
Well, we all know what's going to happen. Trump's going to sit there like a puppy, just smiling because the king's here and he loves everything like that. And the minute, I mean, you know, whatever the jet is that takes the king onto Bermuda, it won't be off the ground and he'll be going, you have the worst prime minister and the most disgusting mayor in the history of the world. Because the royals have it. Trump, in true Trump style, if you miss this, people, is utterly brilliant. Whilst the king's talking about bilateral meetings and alliances and everything that's important, old Donald says, my mother had a crush on you, Chaz. Have a listen. This is just so Trump.
She really did love the family, but I also remember her saying very clearly, Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute. It's my mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it? Amazing how, I wonder what she's thinking right now.
I'd like to know what Charles is thinking, because he sort of went, oh, God, and then he smiled and went, oh, you're a cheeky man. And I honestly think we've had a lot of criticism aimed at the royal family with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and with Harry and Meghan. I think Charles, I said it earlier, Samara, he came of age last night to me. I was proud. I was proud for the first time for the monarchy for a while, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I was really anxious about this trip from a diplomatic perspective, because it would involve serious gymnastics on Charles's part, and we hadn't really seen much from him. I mean, he avoided even doing an Easter message to the nation just a couple weeks ago, which absolutely tarnished whatever legacy he was planning to have. And as you said, it was being totally overshadowed before then by Andrew and the sort of black mold-esque type of reign that he's had, where he's stuck in the royal family and totally tarnished the king's reputation. So I think this is total liftoff for King Charles. This is the way that he will regain his reputation, totally repivot his legacy, and get rid of how his brother has been trying to basically take an axe to it all.
Couldn't agree more. Listen, thank you so much indeed. No doubt you'll be popping up across the day, but as ever, we appreciate your time. Samara Gill, Talk Breakfast presenter, talking all things royal. That trip continues today, and after the news, News, the man who brought all of this to... Dan Hodges started this forensic sort of discussion about whether Starmer... He was on Monday, he said Keir Starmer lied 7 times. Starmer right under the cosh, and Dan Hodges will be on this show after the news at 9. If you do want to be on the show, 0344 499 1000 for your voice notes or your calls. You can text us throughout the last hour, 87222. Do please start your message with the word talk. But as I said, the news at 9 on Talk is next.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
This journey of me following migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there. I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. this was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning, welcome along. This is Talk Breakfast live across the United Kingdom. It's the home of common sense, of course, and the place where your views on the news of the day, alarm clock Brits, matters to us. 0344 499 1000 is the only number you need. Voice notes, calls are welcome. We'll also get your text 87222. I don't apologise for this entire news agenda. Yes, we'll talk about the King. He went to America, great speech to Congress. The bond between America and the UK, irreplaceable and unbreakable. To anybody who's watching it, he's got Donald Trump eating out of the palm of his hand. But what dominates the news and what everybody wants to talk about is Keir Starmer. As Reg Gardner says, the King's speech was magnificent, but I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if Starmer would have been there making the speech. What kind of noise would have come out of his mouth? Today we'll talk about, in great detail, Starmer and his position after yesterday. You'll have heard the news by now. Rocked by a major Labour rebellion, or during the news I heard some bloke say it wasn't a rebellion. Let me tell you why it was. It wasn't just 15 who voted against a three-line whip who will be punished for that. There were 53 others who abstained, and an hour and a half later, in another vote on something else, those 53 were back in the House of Commons because the Labour majority went back up, which tells me that those 78, or whatever the number is, I'm not very good at maths, that's quite a large number. That is half of your majority. It's relevant. Keir Starmer, to avoid going to the Privileges Committee, right, did what they call three-line whipped his MP. So basically said, I'm innocent, to which I'd have gone, well, refer yourself then, mate. Go there and face it if you're innocent, and we can stop this charade and get on with trying to, what is it you say? Improving Britain, bringing in more breakfast clubs. Yeah, because people want lower bills, mate, lower taxation. They don't want to wake up every day seeing you trying to save your own backside, which is what this was. Every newspaper, right? Every single newspaper. Look at the front of the Mail. Labour revolt over Starmer's sleaze cover-up. Look at the top of the Times. Labour MPs whipped to clear Starmer feel complicit in cover-up. There you have it. All those Labour MPs that were told, and you heard it from Ian Duncan Smith earlier, you know, they'll have been told by whips, you'll be deselected in the next election, we've got dirt on you, you better do what he tells you, you need to vote for him. How are they going to feel when it comes out the guy's been lying? Because he has been lying, and one man who has followed this like you would not believe, and we've got him on now, I'm so delighted. A big good morning. I call him the main protagonist, Dan Hodges from the Mail. How are you, my friend?
Very good, thank you.
Wow. I want to cut this down for you. There's so much that I want to ask you. The obvious starting point is, Dan Hodges, if you're innocent, why wouldn't you just refer yourself to the Privileges Committee, do it, be cleared, and get on with running the bloody country? Because even the Tories, by the way, who were slagged off quite rightly at the end, didn't hold a vote. Johnson went and faced up to it. This man is duplicitous at the very least, isn't he?
Well, yes. I mean, he is duplicitous, and I mean, I think that's one of the two main reasons why he played it the way he did yesterday. I mean, firstly, obviously, before the vote, we had two evidence sessions. Actually, we had Sir Philip Barton, the former permanent secretary at the Foreign Office, followed by Morgan McSweeney, obviously Keir Starmer's former chief of staff. And their evidence confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt, although to an extent it's been confirmed for weeks, that Keir Starmer did lie on two specific cases. Firstly, when he said due process was followed, and Philip Barton very articulately and forensically demonstrated that due process hadn't been followed, quite the opposite, in fact. And also the broader issue in relation to whether or not pressure had been brought to bear, and both McSweeney and Barton in different ways confirmed obviously pressure had been brought to bear. So the case against Keir Starmer had been proven, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't want to go in front of the committee. The other reason, though, is the political optics. And this, in a sense, goes to the heart of why this is so damaging for Starmer, because obviously the entire country well remembers Keir Starmer berating on a daily basis Boris Johnson, exposing what he regarded as Boris Johnson's sleaze, Boris Johnson's own lies to the House of Commons. And when Boris Johnson appeared before the committee, that appearance of itself was cited by Keir Starmer as grounds for Boris Johnson to resign. And Keir Starmer knew and knows that if at any point he does appear before the committee, then
But let me jump in. I get that, and we'll do it forensically. Didn't want to go in front of the committee. Optics. Absolutely agree with you about the Boris Johnson thing, but the optics, Dan, from lying and forcing his own MPs through the lobby to be part of this cover-up, the optics are now even worse, because I would respectfully suggest that probably 80 or 90% of this country think this man is a liar. So by not facing the music in this desperate attempt to hold on to your job, there isn't a legacy. He's trashed in my mind. I don't understand the decision-making. He's in a corner of his own making. He might as well put his hands in the air, shouldn't he?
Yes, but I mean, the reality is, in relation to, as you say, his broader political legacy, he needed to put his hands in the air a couple of months ago. I mean, if you remember, there was that weekend where a lot of people were speculating. He'd gone down to Chequers. He was on his own. A lot of people were speculating this could be it. And that was kind of Keir Starmer's last opportunity to get out of this process with a degree of dignity. He could, in a sense, at that point, have got ahead of the scandal, basically said, mistakes were made, they weren't all my mistakes, but I'm the Prime Minister, I should take responsibility. And that could have gave him the opportunity then for a dignified exit. What we're seeing now, we saw it with Boris, we've seen it with previous Prime Ministers. Keir Starmer has run out of road now with this scandal. He's got he's backed himself into a corner with both his lies and with his management of this crisis. So what you're seeing is someone who just has nowhere else to go and no other cards to play. And you could, because you were very, very accurate in your opening. The reality is that there's a lot of spin going around today, obviously from Downing Street for others, Keir Starmer's supporters, and obviously to an extent from some of Keir Starmer's opponents. But everybody in Westminster who has any experience in Westminster knows the truth about what happened last night. The size of the rebellion was too big for Keir Starmer. Yeah, there's a lot of, oh, look, it was only 14 MPs who voted against, and they're the usual suspects. Absolutely right. But as you said, it's the very high number of Labour MPs who abstained. Now, we haven't quite got the details, because obviously there will have been a couple who couldn't make it back. I think, for example, Yvette Cooper was in...
yeah, but there were 53 abstentions, and I think we found out that 3 were travelling, but those other 50 were back in the chamber an hour and a half later.
Exactly.
Massive.
Now, here's where the numbers are important. So you're looking at, on what was effectively a confidence motion, what was a 3-line whip, and crucially was a Tory motion, right? Labour MPs do not like going through the lobbies for form's sake to oppose their party on a motion which has effectively been constructed by their opponents. That's kind of one of the unwritten rules.
Sure.
Despite that, over 60 MPs rebelled. Now, in terms of the practical reality of House of Commons party management, Starmer's majority is 140. So what you actually do, you take around about 70 MPs, you double that because of what the effect they would have if they ever voted against him on various issues, and that's basically his majority gone. But more importantly, we are now into, and this is the thing that Keir Starmer knows this morning, and Downing Street knows, and the Labour Party knows, the number of MPs required to force a leadership challenge is in the region of 80. That's broadly the ballpark we were in last night. And that has introduced a different component to this. One of the things that even ministers and MPs who have spent the last week telling me the game was basically up for him, the one thing they said is, we don't see where the 80 names come from if push comes to shove to force a contest. Well, we can very, very clearly see where it comes from now. And that of itself is going to change the dynamic, because Starmer now knows, and the rest of the Parliamentary Party know, that if he does try and dig in, and he does keep digging in, there are very clearly the numbers there to force a contest on him.
And also, and I take that, I would suspect, and I take your point that Labour MPs famously, and I suspect it's the same for Tories, don't ever want to walk through a division lobby in support of the opposition. But surely MPs, and I'd hope that some of them have consciences, Dan, hate to be told a certain way to vote. And I suspect that a lot of the headlines today, they are now complicit. I mean, somebody said to me earlier, the thing is, you know, whether we were three-line whipped or not, the fact of the matter is, you know, we need to put this behind us and get on with dealing with the problems in the country. The country's going to see this as, we elected you, you know what the truth is, and you were more interested in holding on to your own political seat or your own survival in terms of politics than you were doing the right thing. And then the emails will start into the boxes and they'll go, oh, bugger, if this man's leading us, I'm going to lose my seat anyway. That is also part of this whole situation. But just to bring it back, because you've been totally involved in this, I keep asking this question. I think I probably asked you on Monday, so if I did, I apologise, my friend. Is this man so arrogant with his majority, or arrogant as a human being, that he doesn't smell, doesn't feel, doesn't hear what's going on? Or is he, and I can't, I'm not trying to be rude, or is he just politically not up to it? Is he thick? Because there cannot be anybody with a bloody brain cell, Dan Hodges, that doesn't go, it was a disaster waiting to happen. You spend your life only speaking when a focus group tells you what to do. What were you thinking, man? Mandelson was always going to be the end of the road, which is why, and I get caught online, you say, oh, it's conspiratorial. Is it? What has Mandelson got on this lot? Because my 6-year-old wouldn't have given Mandelson that job. He'd have seen the dangers. That's what I don't get, Dan, at all.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but to go back to your central point, I mean, there's a couple of things. As I've written today in the Daily Mail, one of the damaging things about one of the things last night is last night was not just damaging for Keir Starmer personally. It was also very damaging for the Labour Party for the reason you just described and that others are reporting this morning. Up until yesterday, this was Keir Starmer's scandal. This is now the Labour Party's scandal. He dipped his MP's hands in the blood yesterday, and as I say, the stain is going to take some time to fade away because of this. They are all now complicit in this. Those who voted with him. But on the broader point, again, this is something I wrote about. If you remember, Keir Starmer did an interview over the weekend in which he came up with the comment, you know, people don't understand. It's all being whipped up. My MPs, all my MPs support me. It's all being get up by the media. There's the silent majority. They just want to get on. Yada yada yada. As I said, we saw graphically illustrated yesterday. That's just not the case, and that's why Keir Starmer and Downing Street and the Labour whips were blindsided by the size of the Labour rebellion. But the reason for that is it's not that Keir Starmer's thick. He's a man of very high intelligence.
Well, it didn't seem to use his intelligence, mate.
No, but he's politically, he doesn't understand politics. And also, and this happens, we see this frequently with prime ministers, when you get to the end game, because people have to remember, it's not just Keir Starmer's job on the line, right? It's the job and careers of a significant number of people around him who are part of the Downing Street machine, right? And what happens is, it becomes analogous to that famous downfall video that always does the rounds on social media every time we get to a crisis of this, where you see Adolf Hitler screaming at his generals, where is Steiner? Where are the reserves? The last days of the bunker in Berlin. And that's what we're seeing playing out now politically. He's got people around him who are genuinely not explaining to him what the real political realities are, because they know if they do set out to him in very, very graphic terms what the political realities are, at that point he is going to walk away and they're all going to lose their jobs as well. Wow. So that he is suffering from a bunker mentality. And as I said, when he said in the Sunday Times, actually it's all just getting whipped up, and the silent majority of my MPs back me, he genuinely believed it. And I guess he genuinely believes it this morning. But the reality is the opposite. His MPs don't.
But the truth is, you see, when you say, and I get why you're saying it, he genuinely believes it, there will be people in this country who say he genuinely believes what he says. I'm just astonished, I'm being straight with you here, that for somebody that you describe as intelligent, whether you've got political nous or not, you know when you're lying, you know when you're up a creek without a paddle, and you know absolutely when you're going to be caught out. Can I give you some news which I'm sure you know about? Obviously, we heard this earlier. There are rumours today. Well, in the paper, apparently he's privately offered Angela Rayner a return to cabinet, which is interesting, which led us to speculate on whether he's going to bring back the anti-corruption minister found guilty of corruption in Baghdad, not Baghdad, Bangladesh, of course. But on a serious note, there are rumours, Dan, of a reshuffle in about a week's time because he wants to start phase 3 of the government. I just want to play a little clip because last September, the timing's quite important, this was him announcing phase 2 of his new government, ladies and gentlemen.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction about what we're doing. It needs a more powerful number 10, so we've added to the team with some really important new members. I made a number of other changes, but this is about focus on delivery now, marching forward to the next phase of government.
So that was early September, Dan, 2025, phase 2 of this government's announcement, and the biggest announcement for phase 2 was the employment of Peter Mandelson as the new US ambassador. So I'm not expecting phase 3 to be any more successful than phase 2. Are you?
No, I mean, I've got to be honest. I've kind of lost track of which phase we're on. There's been so many of them. I mean, we've got again. There is, as you said, there is talk of a reshuffle. We reported on this at the weekend.
Rayner, do you see that as likely? Is he that?
No. Angela Rayner. Well, unless sort of allies of Angela Rayner, who I was speaking to earlier in the week, were very, very clear about her views of Keir Starmer and her views on a job offer. So I would be frankly amazed.
So she, in your opinion, she turned down any advances from Starmer. She wants him gone.
Yeah, I mean, I am slightly. There are different reports about this. Keir Starmer saying to her, I can imagine Keir Starmer saying, Angela, you're a great loss to me in the cabinet. We need to. I'd like to look at ways to bring you back. I can imagine a conversation like that. That's not the same as saying, Angela, I want you to be my health secretary or something like that. And I would be very surprised if a conversation like that took place. But again, we're beyond this now. We're beyond state. If Keir Starmer if we see, and the country sees, and the Labour Party see, and the cabinet see, Keir Starmer standing next week in the rubble, amidst the rubble of Labour's local election catastrophe, having lost, thousands of Labour councillors, having lost control, dozens of councillors, seeing heartlands like the last bastion of London breached by the Greens. They see him standing there amid the smoking ruins of Labour's sort of local government operation, and see him, again trotting out. Well, we're now on to stage 3, and we do it with confidence. And we might have something about energy prices, and we might come up with something about kids using social media, and we might have a few.
Yeah, but that every time he makes an announcement, within about 3 seconds, X puts on a community note saying you're lying. I mean, the whole thing, it's almost like dead man walking doesn't do it justice, does it?
Well, again, there was this whole strategy. He intends to move on. That strategy has been blown out of the water because he was obviously so badly weakened by the Mandelson scandal over the last fortnight that Downing Street's original strategy of publishing all the remaining Mandelson messages and documents, taking the political hit on that and moving on, he's too weak to do that. So we're now into the situation where the documents are going to have to be published the other side of the local elections. And the agenda the other side of the local elections will be dominated by Labour carnage on the doorsteps and at the ballot box, followed by yet more Mandelson.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're talking about, and I'm talking about, the pressure and how can he keep going and all the things that we're saying and the evidence that's just irrefutable. And then you think to yourself, there surely will come a time, irrespective of his Vic or his acolytes or the people that he's worried about losing. I think he's worried about anybody but himself. Well, he'll probably just wake up one day or turn around and go, I can't do this anymore. He's not going to ever say, I've messed it up, but that I don't need this and walk away. Is an interesting question for you, sent by Bill in Cheshire. Can you please ask Dan Hodges about the Foreign Affairs Committee? Why aren't David Lammy and, more importantly, Jonathan Powell being questioned by Emily Thornberry and the gang? Good question, that.
I would assume, based on the evidence we've seen, the evidence that Morgan McSweeney gave, the evidence that Barton gave, and obviously Ollie Robbins gave, I'd be amazed if other witnesses aren't called forward, because obviously there are multiple questions. But again, the reality is, I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't matter who is called before the committee.
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure what there's left to learn that we don't already know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that's a really, really salient point. I don't know if you were listening earlier. You probably weren't. You're a busy man. You'll know Richard Maddox, the chief political editor of The Independent. One of the things that you said the 7 times that he's lied was by saying that they had no idea. Do you know about this text message that he sent to the then communications director? Oh, look, 11th of September 2025. Hi, Tim. I've been told by 2 sources now that Mandelson, in fact, did not clear vetting with MI6, but the PM pushed his appointment anyway. The problem was China, not Epstein, though. Is there any comment? Reply, vetting done by Foreign Commonwealth in normal way. So when he stood up and he said in the House of Commons, I didn't know anything about it, almost 9 months ago, the political editor of The Independent texted them and told them, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, that's been well done. I mean, we on the Mail on Sunday, myself and my colleague Glenn Owen, 2 days after that, we sent our own message and had our own communication with Downing Street, because we had a slightly different take on the story.
Okay.
So the story that we published was that there had been a series of red flags in relation to Mandelson's vetting. Those had been raised, but that it had been communicated to those conducting the vetting that it was not politically convenient for those red flags to be sort of acted on because of what Keir Starmer and Downing Street wanted the outcome to be in relation to getting Mandelson out to Washington. And I think actually, on reflection, I think from everything we've seen, that does broadly seem to be what happened. It doesn't quite seem, from the evidence we've had, it's not actually as crystal clear that Peter Mandelson did fail vetting in the technical sense of the word. Because if you remember, there was all the stuff, there was this box and it was ticked, and it was a red box and it had a tick on it. The reality is, that was released by Downing Street. This blank box that was released by Downing Street in the midst of when the scandal about vetting first broke. and was released by Downing Street and paraded as evidence Downing Street and Keir Starmer have been telling the truth. Problem is, no one who has given evidence throughout this process, be it Philip Barton, be it Ollie Robbins, be it the actual head of the UK developed vetting, not only have none of them said they saw the form with a tick on, none of them have said they've ever seen a form that looks like that. So I think my feeling about what happened is it's broadly in line with what we reported last September. There were red flags, and they were just sort of eased away by the system and massaged away by the system because, as we've seen, there was so much pressure to get Mandelson in place in Washington and at speed that it was just managed. It's
really interesting. We talk about all the details and we're doing it forensically, but in the end, it comes down to judgment. It comes down to character. It comes down to just covering your own back and not putting the United Kingdom's interests at the forefront. You've covered politics for a long time. Question for you: we all, 2 years ago, I was a Tory voter all my life. I lost complete faith in the Tories. I've been very honest about it. I think the British public stopped listening. I think that's one of the reasons why Starmer ended up in 10 Downing Street. You covered the Boris stuff. You've covered this Starmer stuff. In the height of the Partygate allegations and Boris Johnson, I didn't ever think it could get worse. I don't know about you, but to me, this is different scale. This is all about a person's complete either inability or derision or arrogance for systems that have been in place for years. And he's been found out. There's no way out of this. It's done.
Yeah, I mean, my view is, I don't know about different scale, but it's certainly commensurate scale. I mean, I'm not one of these people and never was one of these people who said, oh, it's just a piece of cake, and I remember writing.
No, he lied. Absolutely.
And at the time saying, Boris Johnson has to go, he's lied. And crucially, obviously, he and those around him have been caught. They have been caught having parties at a time when all the rest of the country were making.
And what did for him was the picture of the Queen sat on her own at her husband, having served this country. I completely, and I was very vocal. And I should say this: I was very vocal at the time. Politically, I was very annoyed as he moved to the centre, and it was all about green issues and Carrie and all that. But you're absolutely right. All those critics for years who said not over the detail, will let himself down. Spot on. But at least he put himself in front of the Privileges Committee.
No, absolutely. And also,
I'd like to make that point.
Yeah, and also crucially, what did for him was obviously his lies were exposed.
Yeah,
and we saw this is part of why the Labour Party collectively is now contaminated, because we saw Starmer's allies roaming the TV studios yesterday, trying to downplay this and say this isn't anywhere near as important as Partygate was. It is. In fact, in terms of the detail, we've got a situation. Firstly, obviously, the heart of it is Epstein, one of the world's most notorious and evil sex traffickers. We've got him at the heart of this. We've got a situation where this is one of the biggest security scandals that we've seen. We've now seen how Mandelson was fast-tracked, how the vetting in relation to him was fast-tracked, or concerns were massaged away. How he was effectively railroaded into post by Downing Street, despite the fact we now know, obviously, he was compromised in relation to his links with Epstein.
Yeah.
He also, it's been detailed, we've reported it, just about every other paper has reported it. He was compromised in relation to his business dealings, both in terms of companies that had direct links to China, but also direct links to Russia. We reported he was on the board of a Russian company that was, quote, put to me, riddled with Russian spies, and he was put in a place where he had access to the most sensitive intelligence we have. Philip Barton said in front of the committee yesterday, this has directly damaged our relationship with the United States, our most senior ally, and it's currently the subject of an ongoing investigation by both the British police here and the European Fraud Office. So I'm not entirely sure how much more serious this scandal could be.
I couldn't agree more, and we can sit here and we can pontificate and wonder and talk about when and if, but it's so tawdry and it's so lacking in. It's interesting. You talk about the difference between what Boris did there was a sort of bad morality. I think everybody else was going through the hell of COVID and he seemed to be bucking the trend and laughing at us. This is about national security. This is about lying, obviously, but there's so much more. And listen, I know a lot of people think this is conspiratorial, Dan. Just to finish, I start as I finished. I finished as I started. I cannot understand. I listen to their policies sometimes. I listen to their excuses. I just don't understand how they've got to this point. I can't help but think that the power that Mandelson has over the Labour Party, or had until very recently, was so complete, and it just begs the question, how? What's he got? What did he have that even after 2 public humiliating resignations, he's brought back into the fold? He's seen going through the back door at the time of the reshuffle, and he ends up with this plum job when, in essence, you wouldn't have let him through any door if you'd just taken 2 seconds to read about him.
But I think to answer your question, I think it goes back to it actually goes back to how Keir Starmer conducted himself in opposition. And Keir Starmer in opposition, somebody who I think even his allies would accept is effectively a political vacuum. He put at the heart of his political project the idea that he would be different morally in government. You know, he would be morally superior. His government would be morally superior. There would be greater transparency. There would be greater openness. There would be greater candour. There would be no cronyism. There would be no corruption. There would be no sleaze. There would be no lies. And over the course of the 2 or 3 years in which he was prosecuting that argument against the Tory party, as I say, I think he genuinely came to believe it. He genuinely came to believe he was the good guy and the Tories were the bad guys. And that then, therefore, that extended to whatever he did, whatever Keir Starmer did, was good and right and moral and legitimate and acceptable solely because it was him, Keir Starmer, that was doing it. Yeah. So he literally got himself into
start to believe your own publicity, right?
Exactly. I'm doing it. It's me that's doing it. I'm a good person. I know I'm a good person. The country knows I'm a good person. The country knows I'm completely different to all those evil, nasty, sleazy Tories. Therefore, there can't be anything wrong with this because it's me, Keir Starmer, that's doing it. And that, I think, lies at the heart of the whole.
Dan, thank you. I'll make you laugh before we finish, and I've got to let you go. Reg has just said, please read this out to Dan. I think rather than phase 3, we should just get him phased out completely, which is probably
well, that is going to happen.
Dan, thank you. Great work. Read the Mail today, peeps. Dan Hodges is all over that. He'll be back with us next week. Thank you so much indeed, Dan Hodges. At Talk Breakfast, was it 25 to 10 0344 499 1000? Morning, Deanie.
Morning, JK. Another great show. Look, for Starmer, we all know how slippery he is, and we all know what a terrible man he is. He will use anyone and throw anyone under the bus to save himself. That's clear as day. I think what the rest of the MPs need to do, Prime Minister's question time, and I think Kemi needs to lead the charge. And as soon as the question time starts, I think they need to stand up and walk out. That'd be the biggest statement they could do, because week in, week out, they go for question time and he never answers a question. He just answers a question with a question. So for me personally, I think all the MPs that are not Labour to stand up and walk out. It would send such a massive statement to the country. Anyhow, great show, Jez. Keep it up. Dean here from South Wales. Sorry.
Good morning to you. This is Tour the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just breaking news in the last couple of moments. Extraordinary news. Not just that the police have arrived at the Sandringham estate where Prince Andrew, as was now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is currently living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation. And certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes to 10. Julia here from 10 Ian Collins to 1 and Kevin O'Sullivan on Drive from 4. That's your lineup today on Talk. Jez, why can't the Privileges Committee just summon Starmer? Why does he have to be referred, says Roy in Shropshire. Very good point. David, South Gloucestershire. I don't know why I did that. Interesting that Dave said that there was so much pressure to get Mandelson to Washington. I thought, according to Starmer, there was no pressure whatsoever. Jez, says Paul, if I have to do this to get right, you are full of praise for King Charles and his presence in the US and his handling of Trump. Whilst I can applaud the King for this, I can't help but thinking he's remained silent whilst our country, his subjects, are falling into the gutter. He has remained silent in regards to the invasion of Britain. He has remained silent at Easter. Why can't he say more? Because it is a constitutional monarchy, Paul. You might disagree with it, but he is not. He is in America as a representative of his government. I understand your frustration. I just always have to be honest. Dan is in Leek in Staffordshire. Unless he needs a leak in Staffordshire, I've no idea. Morning, Jez. Great show as always. Watching this government is like watching a carry-on film called Thrown Under the Buses, and the Prime Minister Pinocchio is the star as Blakey. Except, to be honest, Blakey would do a better job. Ashley says, Jez, Starmer won't go until he has got us back into Europe, stolen from the farmers, closed all the pubs, destroyed all our relationships, sold the Chagos Island, let down the Jewish community, completely destroyed our personal, and then he might retire. Hashtag fuming. Don't know what that means. I'm going to read this because this is brilliant. We were talking earlier with Siri and Duncan Smith about benefits, and somebody said to me, why don't people dob people in a bit more? I don't know, maybe that's choice. Hi, Jez. Regarding people playing the system, I'm about to dob in my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law decided 18 months ago to give up working legitimately, claim benefits. He's got 3 kids, has been working cash in hand. He's just been given a brand new 3-bedroomed house. He is receiving housing benefit to pay for this. I run my own business. Last year I paid 80 grand corporation tax, 90 grand VAT, and my own personal tax bill. I'm also now paying VAT on school fees even. Where is the incentive for him to work when he's gifted a house paid by the taxpayer that will probably cost in the region of £450,000? Matt in Lichfield, I completely and utterly, totally and utterly share your complete frustration because this country has its priorities wrong. We're going to say a very good morning to Talk's international editor, the wonderful Isabel Oakeshott. Morning, Isabel.
Good morning. Well, can I answer your question about where's the incentive to work? The incentive to work is to find something that you absolutely love doing, be lucky enough to get paid a bit for it. That's you and me, Jezza. But also just for the pride of earning your own money and not leaning on your fellow citizens. And that is what's happened in our society over the last decades, that there has been a complete collapse in that cultural attitude.
Aspiration has gone by the by. And I am all like you. I am all for, absolutely, I want to help people who can't help themselves, but I am sick to death, as are alarm clock Brits, of helping people who are not mentally ill, who are not disabled, who are gaming the system. And until we as a society, I think, have that conversation and say, these people need to be called out, they need to be seen face to face, not over a computer, as from COVID it's still happening. And actually, you know what we need to do is close our borders and stop the pathetic excuse that those underpaid or whatever their jobs, underskilled jobs, you know, fruit pick, whatever they are, should be filled by migrants. No. Get the long-term unemployed who aren't ill off their backsides to give a little bit back in return for the money we're paying them. I've said it for years.
Completely. So we've got to end unconditional handouts.
Yeah.
That culture of, well, you know, you've got signed off perhaps legitimately for a period of time and you never ever have to apply again. That's a nonsense. Of course, if you're terminally ill, you've got some truly horrific condition, it's a horrible thing to have to go back and to demonstrate you're still alive, but you're still really, really ill. I'm not saying we should do that. But, you know, with things like ADHD or other conditions, I think there should be very regular reassessments of whether you can or can't work. And we need a kind of attitude shift, a cultural thing where people want to work. And part of that, Jeremy, is making it worth it for them to work. You know, if you are losing so much of your hard-earned money in tax, and we know that we're at record levels of taxation in the UK, then of course, you know, certain people are quite naturally going to take a pragmatic judgment and say, well, I could be, you know, slaving away for rubbish return, having to give so much of that to the government to waste. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go on the benefit system.
I remember doing
too many problems here, aren't there?
I remember doing a sort of a question and answer thing at the Tory party conference years ago at Birmingham. If I've told you before, tell me to shut up, because it'll embarrass me if I get to the end and you tell me you've heard the story. It's my age. But was interviewing George Osborne, and it was the day that the Tories had announced, I think there was a cap on what a unemployed person could get with a family. It was £25,000, and he gave this out and announced it, and there were 500 people and nobody said a question, and he said, any questions before I go? And I said, I've got one. And he looked at me as if to go, I knew you'd say this. I said, I just don't understand this. If he can get £25,000 for basically doing nothing, and with respect, and he's not ill, I've got a job here to train to work on the Jeremy Kyle show for £22,000. He's not going to take it, is he? Because aspiration is gone. Because we are giving people money that means that they don't have to aspire to being successful. That is fundamentally wrong. And what's right about what Ian Duncan Smith said is, yes, there are, as you said, people with mental illness and people with disability. But we need to get past this, oh, you're attacking everybody. There are people taking advantage who are not mentally ill. You made a great point there. There's anxiety. There's lower forms of ADHD and stuff like that can be medicated, and actually going to work and spending your time with people rather than sitting at home on your backside watching useless daytime television. I thought I'd drop that jibe in. It's not going to help you. Be in a community, be with people, give something back, breathe different air, all of those sorts of things. But we've lost that, Isabel, because we're as soft as whatever, and it's the same thing with the migration problem. We give out too much, I think, now to people who perhaps, well, don't deserve it, and we're screwing the people who are earning the money and paying ever more tax.
Yeah, I mean, look, things are really, really, really bad. And if you are affluent and wealthy, you can live in nice, lovely places like my beautiful hometown in the Cotswolds, and you can let all the bad stuff just wash over you because you've basically bought your way out of experiencing it. But as soon as you start using public services, or you go to your nearest town centre, it doesn't have to be London, you see the extent to which importing poverty has ravaged our cities, our town centres, and promoting poverty via the welfare system is having the same effect. I really think the country is... We are on the brink of being beyond saving.
Well, I woke up to a story this morning, which I'm sure you'll know. A massive 2.2 million extra migrants will allegedly arrive in the UK in the next 8 years. That means the UK's population will peak at what was previously thought, but 40 years earlier at 72.5 million by 2054. We're already in a position where, as you say, the benefits bill's greater than the tax we get through people working. Our public services are creaking. We've got no army, navy or air force. Our borders seemingly are open. We've got no police. Crime's rife. You can go into a shop and steal and nobody. We've got a justice system that's in the toilet, an NHS that frankly doesn't work. How bad can it get before people wise up?
I don't know, Jeremy. I'm more exercised by how bad, what is the point of no return? Yeah. And, you know, we have such a great country. We've got so much to be proud of. I love Britain. You know, it's my home. Mm-hmm. I'm desperate for it to not be as it is. I don't think we've got long before it's gone beyond rescue. That's an awful way to feel, but we do still.
But you know, part of the reason for that, and there's a sort of, you might disagree with that, I think there's an apathy that is, I think this has come from years and years. We were always the country that did right by everybody else. We always thought we were the best. We led the Industrial Revolution. We were successful abroad with this, with that, with the other. It's almost like We're so used to winning the league. We haven't bought, against a football analogy, you won't like it. We haven't bought any more new players. We haven't learnt any more new systems. Oh, bugger me. 20 of the other teams in the division have recruited better, spent more money, have better grounds, and are now playing better football than us. And we're still sat there going, you know what? We're the best. No, we're not. We're not the best anymore. We're not competitive in the marketplace. Internationally, we're a laughing stock. I'm with you, and I hate it because I love Great Britain, but I'm embarrassed. I mean, I texted earlier from somebody who said, I went to bed last night. He said, feeling lived in the United Kingdom. I woke up this morning with the news about Labour MPs being three-line whipped by Starmer. Think I live in bloody North Korea.
Yeah, we've got to try to stay positive. I mean, you know, especially I've got to stay positive because my other half, Richard, is trying so hard to save the country, as are, you know, so many politicians of different parties as well. They might be wrong about how they're going about it, but, you know, shout out for anyone who is giving all day, every waking hour in their different ways, whether through politics or business or whatever they're trying to do to make our country a better place. But make no mistake, we are right on the edge as a country. We are on the brink. And if this goes on too much longer, that is my worry, that it's just too difficult to turn around. You've basically got too many people that have got into the habit of not being able to work and they don't have the skills.
I would say don't want to work, sorry. They don't care what people get upset about. I think that we need to have a debate about the numbers of people in this country who don't want to work. We managed to do a whole thing. We've only got 30 seconds on this particular subject, and I've got a very important question for you. Starmer, three-line whip, dead man walking. He's a disgrace, isn't he?
It's just awful because, again, you know, leadership, without the right leadership, we can't turn the country around. He's got to go. He has to recognise that he doesn't have the support of his own party, never mind the country. But this guy is not going to go. He's not going to walk. He's just going to have to be shoved. I think we're near the point. Hope we are. But we might not.
I bet you never thought you'd be asked this by me, although you probably think you might have been. Before you go, being a woman, have you ever got close to a bird?
There was one on my balcony this morning, Jezza. It's a cute little thing.
Because have you read this today? This is ridiculous. This was established through research that birds in cities fear women more than men. On average, men were able to get 7.5 metres nearer urban birds before they took flight, a full metre closer than women, to establish which was more menacing. Pairs of men and women were recorded walking straight towards pigeons, starlings and other bird life. The birds constantly allowed men to get closer than women. We'll have your view, please.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting. You'd think it'd be the opposite, just on a size basis. You know, women are on average smaller. What's the reason? Do they give a reason?
I've no idea, but I thought most men would allow birds to get nearer to them. I've no idea. I actually am quite scared of birds. Are you scared of birds?
I love birds. No, I love birds.
Do you?
Maybe it's an age thing, Jezza, that I've got to that stage where I kind of appreciate birds. Previously, I was like, what's all the fuss about? There's like 1 million people in Britain that are members of the RSPB, taking it too far, in my opinion.
Are you going bird watching? Is that what we've just discovered about you?
Absolutely not. But if a little bird alights on my windowsill or the balcony, I'm having a look. I think that's a nice thing.
What's your favourite bird?
It's got to be a peacock, hasn't it?
What, a peacock called Richard? A peacock, I love it. Great, I love talking. We managed to do a whole bit without it all being about Starmer. Wasn't that lovely?
I didn't plan it at all.
Thank you so much indeed, darling. Have a great day. Thank you for coming on as ever. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. It is 10 to 10 on Talk Breakfast.
and
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, my friends. Julia Hartley-Brewer here from 10 o'clock. And don't forget, by the way, at 12 o'clock today, Prime Minister's Question Time. I'm slightly thinking, will he turn up? I mean, he didn't turn up for the vote yesterday. Somebody rang and said that the entirety of the opposition benches, the minute he stands up for Prime Minister's Question Time, should all just stand up and go down to the bar. Oh, that'll upset Hannah Spencer. She doesn't like them drinking, the Green candidate. 0344 499 1000. Can I just, because it's been a very deep morning, but this story about birds in cities even fear women more than men, according to research. On average, men were able to get 7.5 metres near to an urban bird before they took flight. A full metre nearer than women. This is a great clip from years ago. Birds, though, are not always friendly to men, as ITV News proved last year. Have a watch.
With attacks reportedly on the rise, what began as a rather amusing tale of harassment by a hawk isn't so funny for villagers anymore. We were filming with Jim Hewitt as he made his way to the shop this morning. Before there was a chance to warn him, the hawk swooped. It is one of the most serious incidents to date. Jim gave us permission to show the damage done to his head because he believes the bird has to go by any means necessary.
I'm sorry. Poor Jim. This was on ITV. He's got blood streaming down his head. He was attacked by a hawk on the way to the post office, which completely blows out the fact that birds in cities fear women more than men. Hawks in some village and wherever, they don't care. They're just going for you. Wear a hat is all I can say. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to North Yorkshire very quickly to get some calls on. Alan, you got 1 minute on Talk Breakfast. What you got, kidder?
Why do the Committee for
Privileges,
Parliamentary Standards need to make an appointment to see the miscreants? Why can't they just walk in and say, right, mate, this is the FBI of England, we're getting hold of you?
Well, they're not the FBI, are they? I mean, they're elected MP. Imagine they all walk into the Commons and go, right, Starmer, we're the FBI of England. You're coming with me to that committee room down there. And I agree with you, though. I don't understand this, why we had to have a vote or he had to force his MPs through the thing. End of the day, why don't they just call him? Because if they called him and he refused, there's the story as well. Good shout, Alan in North Yorkshire, the FBI. Said south to London. Paula, hello.
Hello, good morning. Hi, Jeremy.
How are you?
Hello. I'm very, very well, thank you. How about yourself? You okay?
What?
You're good? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not too bad for a balding 60-year-old has-been. Crack on, 1 minute, go.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, we have a leader that is likened to Ceausescu and Hodja, because if you offer a vote, if you look at the word vote, vote means that you can choose. Choose means freedom. That's not happened, number one. Number two, you have to ask, where are Morgan McSweeney's priorities?
Where are Morgan McSweeney's what? No, don't be unfair about Morgan McSweeney's. Unfortunately, he had his priorities stolen and he didn't actually manage to keep the notebook about what his priorities should be because it was taken, but he didn't keep a record, so he doesn't know what way to turn.
His loyalty to his country or to the United Kingdom is what I'm asking.
I couldn't agree more, Paula. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go back to North Yorkshire. Are we going back to North Yorkshire for another? You want to go to a break, do you? What, right now? OK, we'll go to a break. Back in 3.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. She's here, the First Lady of Talk, Julia.
Hello, hello, hello.
You've been fascinated about the King's trip.
Do you know what? You know me. Look, you know my views on these things. We'd have opposite polar views on this. But this is where the soft power comes in. This is what you have a king for. Absolutely stonking job, repairing the relationship on his own.
And also
Trump
doing a big boost for the monarchy.
Absolutely. This is the thing. It's not just about, keeping Trump happy. It's about, appealing to the people in Congress on both